The first thing I ever felt in that world was a voice drilling through my skull like a dentist who hates me personally. All players have been teleported. Welcome to the bizarre survival game world. The sky pressed down on me, gray and thick, like someone had stretched a dirty dish rag over the whole planet. Cold air, dead grass, broken concrete under my sneakers. And that voice just kept going, cheerful as a funeral bell. All players are bound to their initial shelter. The shelter and the player are one. The shelter dies, you die. Cool, very cool. Love a good hostage situation where the hostage is a cabin. My name is Li Wei, and 30 seconds into the apocalypse I was already checking my mental interface like a man checking his pockets after a pickpocket walked by. Chat channel, personal info, inventory. The chat was already screaming. Somebody was crying about his 30,000 square meter villa. Somebody was asking if a tall, handsome gym student could come protect her from ghosts. Humanity, ladies and gentlemen. 2 minutes into a death game, and we were already flirting. Then I noticed the small problem. Everyone in chat was talking about waking up inside a wooden cabin. Their shelter, their lifeline, their government-issued survival hut. I was standing in an open field. I typed with the calm of a man whose parachute bag feels suspiciously light. Anyone else not inside a cabin? And the chat answered the way chat always answers. Bro, stop trolling. The cabin is the shelter. Don't you have one? No. No, I did not. The system gave everyone a house, and gave me a death sentence with extra steps. I stood there in the wind doing the math. Shelter equals life. No shelter equals a countdown. My plan A instantly became stealing somebody else's cabin, which tells you everything about how long my morals survived in this world. About 90 seconds. And then the voice came back, and this time it was talking only to me. Humanoid shelter system successfully bound. The shelter has merged with the host. All shelter functions will be converted into host attributes. Gain 30 constitution. Wooden walls converted to wooden skin. Shelter repair converted to self-repair. Storage room converted to storage space. I read that twice. Then a third time, slower, the way you reread a lottery ticket. Everybody else got a cabin. A thing made of planks that any large monster could kick apart like a sandcastle. I got the cabin installed directly into my body. I was the house. The house was me. If I upgraded the walls, my skin got harder. If I expanded the storage, I grew a pocket dimension. And unlike every other sucker in Region 104, I would never have that classic horror movie moment of running home while something with too many legs runs faster. 10 minutes ago, the universe said, "Lol, no house for you, buddy." Now I had 380 health points when the standard human came with 80, a skill that healed 1% of my health for one lousy unit of wood, a passive that shaved 5 damage off every hit, and 5 square meters of magic pocket. I flexed my fingers and felt oak underneath the skin. If before this I was a man waiting to die, now I was a load-bearing wall with opinions. So I went shopping. The field around me was dotted with little glowing orbs, and every orb I touched chimed into my head like a slot machine. 2 units of wood. 1 unit of wood. 2 more. The system refreshed supplies at random, and every other player was still inside their cabins asking chat whether it was safe to open the door. Early bird gets the entire forest. Then I found a treasure chest sitting under a dead tree, glowing politely, and inside were 2 loaves of bread and a bottle of water. Which told me something important about this world. Food came from chests and luck. The puddles around here were black and smelled like a sewer with ambitions. This was going to be a hungry place. That was when I heard the rustling. The thing that came at me through the dead grass was a lump of rotting meat the size of a basketball, jogging. It had grown 3 little legs out of itself, and it ran the way a nightmare runs, wet and wrong and way too motivated. My chest tightened, my stomach flipped, and the system helpfully explained why. You witnessed something strange, sanity -1. So this world didn't just want my health bar, it wanted my mind. Noted. Here's the thing though, there was an experience bar in my status screen, and experience bars mean one thing. Killing that ugly meatball would make me stronger. And I had 380 health points and the confidence of a man who has never been bitten by a meatball before. I charged it. It jumped me. It latched onto my foot like the world's worst slipper, and split open into a mouthful of needles, and my skin went hard as oak where it bit down. 5 damage blocked, 2 health lost, out of 380. I looked down at the horror gnawing on my shoe, with all the menace of a hamster fighting a boot. Little guy, is that everything you've got? I grabbed a rock and introduced it to the meatball repeatedly. -5, -6, -4. It smelled like a dumpster fire in a fish market, and honestly, the smell did more damage to me than the teeth. Then the chime. Congratulations on defeating the tumor, 5 experience points. And then 3 more chimes, loud, regional, broadcast to every player in the zone. Area announcement. Congratulations to player number 88, Li Wei. First kill of a strange creature. First kill reward earned. 3 times. The system said it 3 times, like a proud grandma. The chat exploded. Who is Li Wei? How is someone already killing monsters? Is he insane? Is he single? I ignored all of it because the system had dropped a gift pack into my inventory, and I have priorities. First kill reward, 1 piece of equipment, 1 combat skill, 2 free attribute points. The skill was called Skullcracker. Gather your strength, target the head, double damage, double speed. The flavor text said, before you crack a skull open, you never know if there's a brain inside or a pile of garbage. I liked this skill immediately. We shared a philosophy. The equipment was a lollipop. I want to be very clear, not a lollipop-themed weapon, an actual candy lollipop, 1.5 meters long, sugar disc the size of a wash basin, with a crying cartoon face in the middle. Strength +2. Special effect 1. It wails when you swing it. Special effect 2. It's edible, but every lick melts your weapon a little. The item description begged me not to taste it before a fight because it's too delicious and I'd regret using it as a club. 30 gnolls worth of monsters out there in the fog, and my starting weapon was a sad candy hammer that cries. I stood in a gray apocalypse holding a giant lollipop, and somewhere out there my new life was laughing at me. Fine. I put my 2 free points into strength, felt the power soak into my arms like hot tea, and gave the lollipop a test swing. The air went whoom. The crying face wailed. Okay, that's actually terrifying. I withdraw my complaint. Around then, the cabin doors finally started opening, and the brave citizens of Region 104 came blinking out into the gray. And of course, the first thing a crowd of scared people did was find the guy with the announcement and the giant candy. They gathered around me like pigeons around a sandwich. Bro, what monster did you kill? Bro, where did you get that lollipop? Bro, can I have a lick? No, next question. They wanted the monster info for free, obviously. Everyone wants everything for free at the end of the world. And look, I get it. I'd want it free too. But resources were limited. These people were not my friends, and the strong don't get strong by running a charity. So I put on my best exhausted survivor face, coughed twice for effect, let them get a good look at the stains on my clothes, and said the information that almost cost me my life could be theirs. For wood. Or food. You'd think I'd asked for their kidneys. The chorus was instant and beautifully rehearsed for a species that had known about monsters for 40 minutes. Brother, it's just information. Don't make things awkward. Brother, we all live around here. We'll be seeing each other forever. Why start like this? Wow, a big shot already learning to jack up prices? Incredible. He's just lucky, and now he thinks he's special. And my personal favorite, aren't we all supposed to help each other survive? Delivered by a man whose entire contribution to the collective so far was standing near it. Meanwhile, the ones eyeing my lollipop got bolder. It's so big, you can't finish it alone. Sharing is caring. I slept all day and got teleported before dinner. Have mercy. One meaningful look was all it took to establish that mercy was sold separately, same price as the info. One guy in a tight shirt and an attitude, name tag Zhao Jian, started working the crowd immediately. Brother, we're all neighbors here. Why make things awkward? Translation, give us your stuff. The crowd grumbled about greedy merchants and drifted off to find their own fortunes. And Zhao Jian loudly defended my right to keep my own lollipop, which was the single most suspicious thing that had happened all day, and I'd just been bitten by a jogging meatball. Sure enough, when I slipped away to the empty outskirts, 3 sets of footsteps followed me. Zhao Jian and 2 friends, all wearing the smile of men escorting a lamb somewhere quiet. They flanked me. They called me brother 11 times. Then the quiet spot arrived, and the smiles came off. Hand over the lollipop and everything else, or we loot your corpse. Take your pick. I did my startled rabbit impression. No, please, I'll give it to you, don't hurt me. And I raised the lollipop up with both trembling hands, all humble and obedient, while one of them reached out to take it. Then my waist turned, my back uncoiled, and 1.5 meters of weaponized candy came around with everything my upgraded arms had, plus skullcracker, straight into the reaching man's head. The lollipop went wah. The man's head went like a watermelon at a magic show. The other two froze, painted in the consequences of their life choices, and before either of them figured out which leg runs, I swept the candy low and broke both their thighs. Not out of cruelty, out of logistics. I had 0 speed advantage, and men with broken legs don't need chasing. They flopped down screaming, and my new system chimed in with its usual sunny tone. Congratulations on killing a human, 5 experience points. Human encyclopedia, 40% unlocked. Encyclopedia, interesting. The system kept a monster guide, and apparently humans were in it. Which, fair, the second robber got the same headline as the first. The encyclopedia ticked to 80, and Zhao Jian, the friendly neighbor, the crowd whisperer, the man who'd planned this whole picnic, sat in the dirt with his broken legs and swore up and down that he'd only ever spoken up to defend me. I told him, honestly, apologetically, that I really wanted to see what the encyclopedia gave at 100%. He said, "Encyclopedia? What are you talking about?" The lollipop cried, and then it was quiet, and the system sang 3 times across the whole region. Congratulations to player number 88, Li Wei, first to unlock a creature encyclopedia entry. I looked at the 3 of them lying there and let the shakes pass through me once because I'm human and killing people is supposed to cost something. Then I filed it where it belonged. This was a game of life and death now. They came to take mine. Instead, they became 5 experience points each and a warning label. I wiped the candy clean on their clothes and made myself one quiet rule. The lollipop was never food again. You 3 were just the beginning. The encyclopedia reward turned out to be the real prize. Damage against humanoid creatures up 10%, plus 5 free attribute points. 5. For context, a normal person's whole stat line was 3 tens. The system was handing out 1/3 of a human being for reading a book it wrote about my victims. I split the points between strength and agility and felt my nerves rewire, everything clicking tighter like a gun getting cleaned. There was also a blueprint in the reward pile, furnace construction plans. Requires a level 2 shelter, plus wood, stone, and something called a flame crystal. And that's when the full shape of my cheat finally hit me. Every building a normal player could bolt onto their cabin, my body would eat and turn into a power. A furnace wasn't going to be a furnace for me. It was going to be something else. Something rude, probably. I couldn't wait. Meanwhile, my hunger bar had been quietly dropping, so I ate my bread by a rock and got interrupted mid-chew by a trade request. Player number 7471, Chen Hao, first customer of the apocalypse. He wanted the monster info, and he opened with, "Boss, I heard you're selling. I'm buying. A man of culture." I sold him the tumor file for 2 units of wood, and the system did this genuinely elegant thing where it beamed the knowledge straight into his brain, notarized, with anti-resale protection. This world's admin was a psychopath, but the psychopath ran a tight marketplace, and that gave me an idea, because of course it did. I knew how to unlock encyclopedias. That knowledge was worth 5 free attribute points to literally anyone, so I packaged it. Learn the secret of 5 free stat points, 2 units of wood, satisfaction guaranteed. What I didn't put in the listing was that the method involved either killing monsters or killing 3 people, because that's not a lie, that's marketing. The orders chimed in one after another while I walked. 2 wood, 2 wood, 2 wood. And then the reviews came in, and my brand suffered its first scandal. Because the good people of Region 104 discovered that knowing how to get points is not the same as having points, and they took to the chat like it was a consumer hotline. Don't buy from Li Wei. The info is technically true and completely useless. 1 star. 52 units of wood in my pocket. I regret nothing. The info was real. Skill issue. Although I'll admit the customer testimonials were art. One guy organized a boycott. One guy demanded a refund policy from a mind-reading apocalypse system. And one player named Lin Yan offered to cook and do my laundry in exchange for free information, which was the first marriage proposal of my new life, and I handled it with the grace it deserved, by not answering. The boycott lasted until somebody remembered nobody else in the region had any information to sell, at which point it became a waiting list. The afternoon was pure gold rush. With the whole region finally outside and grabbing, the orbs thinned out fast, so I worked the edges, the far places where cabin dwellers wouldn't risk walking, and the strategy printed money. Wood in the fields, wood in the ditches, a chest with nothing in it but disappointment, another with clean water I drank on the spot. The sky stayed the color of an old bruise. Twice I heard fighting somewhere in the gray, the wet, panicked kind, and twice I minded my own business at speed. My constitution could tank monsters. My schedule could not tank other people's problems. That's when I found the body. Some guy face down one day into the end of the world. And the wounds bothered me more than the death did. Straight cuts, punctures. Nothing in this world's starting bestiary had edges that clean, which meant the local wildlife hadn't done this. A player had. And here's the ugly math I did standing over him, the same math someone else had clearly finished before me. The encyclopedia needed 3 humans for the full unlock. Whoever started down that road wasn't going to stop at 1, and the region was full of soft, slow, distracted targets carrying their whole net worth in their pockets. I filed the face, memorized the wound pattern, and moved on. Not my problem. Repeat after me, Li Wei. Not your problem. This mantra had a shelf life of about 2 hours, because that was when the system dropped the 2-hour warning, the black tide bulletin, and the whole region's afternoon plans into a blender. The chat's live reaction deserves preservation. First, panic, everyone realizing the safe radius meant abandoning half the map's unclaimed loot. Then, bravado, some genius announcing the monsters weren't even that scary since he hadn't seen one all day. Then the correction, mid-sentence, a different player typing that he could see something moving in the grass, then typing, "What is that?" then typing in fragments, then not typing. Then the chat's collective decision that the first guy could test his theory alone, and a stampede of little cabin doors slamming across the region. I watched all of it from the wrong side of the 2-kilometer line, where the loot was, eating somebody's abandoned afternoon. An hour of scavenging later, I was sitting on a boulder doing inventory when the system dropped the evening news on everyone at once. 2 hours until nightfall. And here was the kicker. Move more than 2 kilometers from your shelter, and the black tide cuts all your stats by a fifth and makes monsters like you more. Every player in the region did the same math at the same time and started running home. I checked my own status. Distance from shelter, 0 kilometers. Always. Forever. The debuff looked at me, a man who is his own house, and gave up. So while the whole region stampeded back to their cabins, I strolled the emptying map, picking up everything they didn't have time to grab. Somewhere out there I passed a dead player face down in the grass, wounds too clean and too straight for any meatball. Knife work. Somebody in this region had done the same math I did with the encyclopedia, except their version didn't stop at 3. Good to know. Charming neighborhood. Then I heard the screaming. I want to be honest about my motives here. I did not run toward the screaming to save anyone. I ran toward the screaming because screaming means monsters. Monsters mean experience, and experience means number go up. What I found in a clearing of pebbles was a girl on the ground with 2 tumors on her, and these were not my basketball friend from this morning. They'd grown fur. Except it wasn't fur, it was some kind of fungus threading out of the rot, and the sight of it stuck a needle straight into my brain. Mind corrupted, sanity -1. And I did the thing that saved my mind 100 times after. I started humming. Loud, stupid, off-key, the theme song from a cartoon about a happy little lamb. The wrongness slid off me like rain off a window. Turns out you can't have an existential crisis and a children's cartoon jingle in your head at the same time. The brain only has one channel. The girl was past saving. I could see it. She could see it. And the look she gave me had jealousy and hatred and a horrible little spark of satisfaction. Like, at least you're going to die here too. There was also a treasure chest behind her glowing green instead of white. And I'd love to tell you my eyes went to her first. I couldn't save her. But I could make it quick, and I could make her killers pay rent. The first tumor came off her body and leaped, fur streaming out into ribbons, fast, way faster than the morning model. It got my thigh. Wood skin ate most of it. I swung the lollipop down and the whole wet nightmare of it just stopped existing. The kill chime rang. Then the second one lunged, and I gave it the skullcracker, and 1.5 meters of streaming candy split it in half like a piñata full of regret. -87. 1 swing. The girl got her release somewhere in the middle of that. I didn't watch. Some things you do with your hands and not your eyes. And then, because this world had comedic timing, a third tumor jumped me from behind and glued itself to my other leg, and while I was tearing at it, a fourth showed up. I fell over. I fought 2 meatballs lying on my back in the dirt, punching rot with my bare fists, wheezing at a stench that could strip paint. And this is the moment a man named Li Longfei chose to walk out of the fog with a machete and an audience of 1's smile. I knew 3 things instantly. 1, the clean knife wounds on that corpse earlier were his work. 2, he'd been standing there, waiting for the tumors to soften me up. 3, he thought the guy lying in the dirt was already finished because he started monologuing. He really did the whole thing. Told me his name like I'd ask, announced he was one of the future top powerhouses of this world. said that when he stood at the summit someday, he might still remember me, and that this was a great honor. I lay there in tumor juice, listening to a man narrate his own trailer, and I gave him fair warning. I said, "You know villains die from talking too much, right?" He laughed and went for the green chest instead, so I mentioned, "Don't go near that, it's dangerous." Total lie, but now he approached it slow and scared, checking shadows for an ambush that didn't exist, and while his back was turned, the corpse he'd been calling me quietly got up off the ground with a lollipop. The candy sang its little song on the way down. He got the machete up in time, which saved him for exactly one exchange. Then Skullcracker came through his guard like a delivery truck through a screen door, and the future top powerhouse of this world folded up in the dirt with all his unspent potential. I patted his shoulder on the way down and told him the dizziness was normal. "It seems," I told him, "you were just a bit unlucky to run into me." His loot orb was a whole Christmas stocking. 24 wood, meat drops off the dead tumors, a purification stone that turned filthy water into drinking water at the low, low cost of 50 of my own health points per bottle, a price that would kill a normal player twice and cost me a rounding error. And his machete, an actual scimitar with a rage mechanic. Attack 3 times fast, and it feeds you strength while chewing on your sanity. The flavor text was the deranged diary of the previous owner. I equipped it anyway. Beggars, choosers, and so on. Then the green chest. Inside sat a palm-sized dark red badge, mid-grade, and mid-grade in a world of gray trash meant treasure. The crimson badge. Activate it, lose 1 health per second, and every hit you land tears wounds open so they can't close. And a second effect, locked, that grew stronger the more things the badge watched me kill. Growth-type equipment. The engraving on the back was somebody's laughing meltdown, and I pinned it to my chest like Employee of the Month. Somewhere in there, I also field-tested the purification stone, because my water bottle had been empty since noon, and the only liquid for a kilometer was a black puddle that reflected the sky like an oil spill. The procedure was simple and completely insane. Fill the bottle with poison, drop in the white stone, watch 50 health points leave my body, and watch the stone drink the filth out of the water like a magnet pulling iron filings, until the bottle held something clear and the stone held something terrible. The price would have folded any normal player in half. My health bar barely noticed a withdrawal. I sniffed it, sipped it, and stood there in the dark having a small religious experience over clean water, which is the apocalypse in one sentence. The stone came out cracked, 2 uses left, aging faster than me. Everything in this world had a battery life except the problems. Night came down while I counted wood. 90 units, 10 short of a shelter upgrade. And the fix walked right out of the chat, because the whole region was hungry, and I was the only clown who'd been outside collecting monster meat all day. I listed 2 lumps of tumor meat at 5 wood each. They sold before I finished typing the ad, 100 wood on the dot. Upgrade. The word wasn't even fully out of my head before the wood in my inventory turned to light and poured into my bones. Shelter level 2. Durability up, which for me meant another 30 constitution stacked on the first 30, and my health bar swelled to 700. The rest of the upgrade menu unrolled into me like software installing. The little rest bonus every cabin gives its owner became endless recovery, always on, because I never leave the building. The campfire feature became a fireball, an actual fireball, 5 wood per cast, thrown from my fingers, burning for half an hour. My cabin's amenities were turning into a wizard, and the system screamed my name across the region for the 3rd time that day. First player to reach shelter level 2, special reward granted. The chat had a meltdown about the wood economy. Somebody accused me of being funded by their info purchases. Technically true. Thanks for your support. The special reward was a small black bottle called Dark Whisper. Drinking it would permanently raise my resistance to madness. In a world that charged my sanity like a parking meter, that was priceless. I pulled the cork, got a lungful of sweet rose stink, and knocked it back. And then I heard the hospital. Beeping. Slow, steady, machine beeping. The exact rhythm of the monitors in every drama you've ever half-watched. Then voices, muffled, like through a wall of water. A woman asking, "Doctor, my son's brain activity, can we wake him? Is it possible?" A doctor's measured answer, "That's hard to say. He's been in the deep dream so long he may not know he's dreaming. It's like the old story of the sage dreaming he was a butterfly. He must realize it himself, but let's try." Clinical, plausible, beautifully produced. And then the woman again, crying now, right next to my ear. "Li Wei, wake up. It's your mom. You said you had a dream that felt like years and I didn't take it seriously. Don't scare me. Wake up. The gray world around me went soft and blocky, like a screen about to shatter. And the logic slid into my head so smooth, so reasonable. This world was the dream. The beeping was real. And a dreamer who dies in the dream wakes up in the bed. All I had to do was end it here. My hand was already finding the scimitar. Simple. Painless. Mom's waiting. One small problem. I'm an orphan. I don't have a mother. The whole illusion shattered like a windshield. Same gray field. Same dead grass. Same me, standing there with a blade half raised and 7 fresh sanity points missing, listening to the last echo of a voice that had rummaged through my head for a mother and, finding the folder empty, made one up. Sloppy. Very sloppy. You want to catfish me, at least read my file first. I was still shaking when the moon rose, and I used the word moon loosely. It was an eye, a full, round, luminous eye, hanging where the moon should be, and it moved. It looked around. It blinked, and when the lid came down, the whole world went dark for a heartbeat. The system rolled out the night rules with its usual customer service voice. 3 days of newbie protection. Stay in your shelter at night and nothing attacks you, and you'll be immune to the gaze. The gaze. The status effect was literally called that. Get stared at by the sky, and your sanity drains until the lights go out in your head. Light sources distract it. So the whole survival loop of this world was, hide in your box, keep a fire going, and don't let the moon see you. Unless, of course, you happen to be your own box, in which case the night was just free real estate. I sat under a giant eyeball, dipped bread in clean water, and enjoyed the view. And while I chewed, I listened to the chat, where a beautiful business opportunity was crying itself to sleep. Half the region had tumor meat in their pockets. Raw, it was poison. Cooked, it was dinner. And nobody, not one single player, had fire. Their cabins wouldn't unlock a campfire until level 2, which meant the entire region was sitting on ingredients, staring at a recipe, missing a stove. I had a fireball. Leeway's barbecue officially opened that night. 2 units of wood per lump. You send me the raw meat, I send back a cooked meal with triple the shelf life. The chat did its usual routine, half of them screaming, "Scammer, he'll steal your meat," the other half quietly placing orders. My first customer was Chen Hao again. The man was becoming a regular, and he tipped me with a message that actually got me somewhere soft. He said the tumor info I sold him had saved his life that day. First good review in company history. I told him that was his own skill, and he'd paid for it fair. Both things true. 20 orders in 1 fire's worth of burn time. I sat there turning skewers of monster meat over my little wizard flame, wood stacking up in my inventory, humming to myself under the giant eye in the sky. The smell coming off those skewers started as a war crime and mellowed into something almost like street food, and every time a finished order traded back to its owner, the chat lit up with the sound of a hungry man discovering hot dinner in the apocalypse. One customer showed his cooked meat off in the channel like a trophy fish. 3 more orders arrived on the spot. Somebody accused me of running a monopoly. Somebody else asked the accuser what he was eating tonight, and the accuser logged off. And you know what? Life at the end of the world had a certain flavor to it, mostly rot and smoke, but a certain flavor. Then a private message came in that wasn't about barbecue. Player Xiao Mei, number 5471. Boss, you clearly don't lack food or water. I have something valuable to trade. What she had was a yellowed slip of paper, item type, relic, ghost touched. It supposedly contained the method for waking up something called a 1,000-eye tree, and killing the tree paid out unique resources. I traded her some cooked meat and clean water for it, and I could practically hear how thirsty she was through the screen. Fair deal. Everybody wins. Remember that phrase, it gets funnier later. I used the paper. It burst into flame in my hand, a blue light dove into my chest, and the system informed me, with zero shame, that I was now haunted. A vengeful spirit, it said. He will pester you until his last wish is fulfilled. The ghost materialized in front of me, translucent and blue, with dark hollows where his eyes used to be. He clasped his hands and said, "Kind person, please help me. The 1,000-eye tree took my eyes and my life. Wake it and kill it, I beg you." Now, a normal protagonist hears a tragic ghost and gets moved. I heard a quest giver with no reward listed, and I asked, "Is there a completion bonus?" The ghost blinked his empty sockets. "Kind person," he said, "what are you saying?" I said, "I'm saying, what does your tree have to do with me? Why should I help?" And the tragic spirit's saintly patience lasted exactly one more sentence before he dropped the kind person act and threatened to haunt me day and night until I wasted away into an early grave. To which I said, "Go ahead, pester away. Worst case I die, come back as a ghost myself, and haunt you right back for eternity, and we'll see which of us gets tired of the arrangement first." The silence that followed was a dead man auditing his leverage and finding the account empty. You can't threaten a man with clinginess when he has no schedule, no loved ones, and no shame. Finally he coughed. Ghosts can cough, apparently, and offered a building blueprint on delivery. Deal. I tried for the blueprint up front, obviously, and he refused, flatly. Payment strictly after the tree dies. Don't worry, we spirits keep our word. I pushed twice more on principle and got stonewalled twice more, and honestly, it earned my respect. Dead 3 days minimum and still holding escrow. When he got antsy about my pace, kind sir, the tree, I told him the tree had waited this long and could wait until I finished leveling. And the ghost of a murdered man learned what it feels like to be someone's side quest. He led me to a stand of gray, identical trees whose leaves all carried a little eye-shaped mark and pointed at one. Just that one, only the tree that killed him. A vengeful spirit with a targeted grievance and no collateral damage. They don't make ghosts like that anymore. The wake-up method turned out to be a recipe. Grind tumor meat into paste, soak it in sewage, drop in a little golden catalyst stone he provided, and boom, the sludge boiled itself down into a gray potion the system stamped as an inferior awakening agent. It also stamped something better into me. Recipe learned. I now knew alchemy the way you know a phone number, and somewhere in the back of my head a cash register rang. I poured the sludge on the roots and stepped back. The dead tree shivered. Every leaf fell at once, and then new ones exploded out, lush and green, and red fruit swelled up along the branches, every single fruit with a half-open eye in the middle, all of them looking at me. My skull buzzed. Sanity -2. Then the roots came out of the ground like harpoons. My scimitar got the first wave. The second wave got me. A whip of root across the ribs that my rock-hard skin only partly argued with. And the tree itself didn't care what I did to its roots. No health bar movement at all, which meant the trunk was the only real target, and the trunk was fenced in by a thrashing hedge of whips. So I stopped being polite with my wood budget. Fireball, fireball, fireball. The roots caught, the tree flinched, and the second it flinched, I was through the gap with the badge burning on my chest and skullcracker loaded. The lollipop hit the trunk, and the trunk lost the argument. -214. Torn wide by the badge so it couldn't knit shut, and then I fed 2 more fireballs directly into the wound and let physics finish the job. The tree burned like it had been waiting years for permission. 40 experience. And out of the ashes rolled exactly 1 seed, round, warm, shaped like a closed eye. That bonfire lit up half the night, and I discovered the next morning that the entire region had watched my little forestry project through their windows. The chat spent the dark hours on arson theology. Who's burning things at night? Can fire even exist at night? Should we go look? Are you insane? Nothing that starts fires at midnight wants visitors. By dawn, a walking tour had formed anyway. Brave souls poking through the ashes and the ring of dead eye trees, assembling theories. Their best guess connected the burn site to the eye fruit some merchant had been selling, and the merchant to me, and the conclusion to nothing, because none of it made sense with what they knew. I read the whole investigation over breakfast. Being a mystery is free entertainment. The ghost glowed like a lottery winner. And here's the thing, he paid. Blueprint in my hand, a real one, plantation construction plans. And then he came apart into little drifting lights with the single most peaceful expression I'd seen on anyone in this world, living or dead. Rest easy, buddy. Best business partner I had all week. His blueprint, the plantation, wanted wood and humus. The humus turned out to spawn in a forest nearby, whole orbs of it, and the wood gap I closed by selling the tree's eye fruit in the trade channel because it turned out the creepy fruit was edible and gave a reaction speed buff, and hungry people do not ask follow-up questions about eye contact with their dinner. Sold out in minutes. Then I hit build, and my body did the thing I was already learning to both love and fear. The plantation converted, the system called the new ability, to take oneself as earth. I could plant seeds. In me. My body was now farmland, and whatever grew would pay its harvest out as abilities. I stood there for 1 second contemplating the sentence I had just read, then took out the eye seed and watched little red threads reach out of my own palm, wrap the seed, and pull it inside like the world's most affectionate horror movie. Growth progress 0%. Feed to accelerate. It wanted meat. Of course it wanted meat. Everything in this world wanted meat. I shoveled my whole stock of tumor drops into my arm, watched the number tick to 9%, and made a note that I was now technically an orchard. Then I lay down in the open, under the eye that was the moon, on night 1 of the apocalypse, and slept like a baby. Newbie protection. Best 3-day trial subscription of my life. Morning came, the eye clocked out, and the system greeted the whole region with the enthusiasm of a game show host. Congratulations on surviving day 1. Every player receives a random gift pack. And also, quick heads up, the world is now generating more monsters. Look forward to your spectacular performances. The gift was literally called a garlic addict's masterpiece, and the item description openly admitted the prize pool ran from free food all the way to sudden death. The chat lit up with prayers, and somewhere a man screamed that he'd hatched a monster inside his own cabin and it was currently renovating. I spun mine, icons flickered, and the wheel stopped on a building. Teleportation array. For a normal player, a homing beacon. Activate it anywhere within 10 kilometers and get yanked back to your shelter. Useful, defensive, sensible. Then my body ate the blueprint, and the conversion chime sang, and I read my version. Fixed point teleportation. Because I am the shelter, teleporting to the shelter means teleporting to wherever I want to be. Any point within 10 kilometers. Once every 6 hours, full energy cost, but still. The cabin down the road got a panic button. I got a blink. I spent a moment being deeply, sincerely grateful that this world's system had never read its own patch notes. The rest of the region's gambling results made for excellent morning radio. The chat filled with winners bragging in vague terms and losers screaming in specific ones. One man got a full set of gear and immediately started trash talking. Another announced mid-sentence that his prize had hatched into a monster, and the monster was currently dismantling his cabin from the inside, and the chat's response was a wall of, "Good luck, bro." A third had won food and could not stop telling everyone, and a fourth offered to trade his unopened pack for a meal, was refused, and took it personally. And somewhere in the noise, a quiet trend line only I seemed to be tracking. A handful of players had just gotten weapons, powers, and dangerous ideas, all in the same morning. The wheel hadn't just handed out prizes, it had handed out ambitions. You could feel it in the air by noon. The polite fiction of day 1, all us survivors together, was developing cracks. Players formed squads with the specific energy of people who'd already picked out who wasn't in them. The trade channel prices crept up, and the first open complaint about resource theft appeared in chat, then the second, then a name. A player publicly accusing one Zhou Ming, number 65887, of robbery and attempted murder. The chat rallied around the victim with tremendous courage, everyone promising vengeance from inside their locked cabins. Remember that name, by the way, Zhou Ming. The apocalypse has a small cast and a smaller sense of irony. The gray day took me toward the humus forest, where a small crowd of players had gathered at the tree line, wearing the specific face of people who had recently run away from something. Then the something provided a live demonstration. A man staggered out of the woods, swollen all over, skin like a mannequin, begging for blood in a voice that had left human behind a few exits back. Before anyone could react, a black cloud came off the trees, a buzzing mass of flying things, and it wrapped the poor guy up and carried him back into the woods like room service in reverse. The crowd's response was a middle-aged man named Zhao Gang, stepping up and giving a speech about how humans must huddle together for warmth, join his team, share all loot. Reasonable pitch. Warm message. Only the weak huddle, so I walked past the entire seminar and straight into the woods everyone had just evacuated. Behind me, somebody shouted, "Young man, it's dangerous in there." And then, "Is he deaf?" And then, "Wait, is that a lollipop on his shoulder?" And then, "That's Shen Hui." My reputation was becoming a whole thing. The woods were silent in the way a mousetrap is silent, and the first thing that found me was the swollen man from before, or what was wearing him. He charged me, moaning about blood. I put the lollipop through him on reflex, and he popped. Not died, popped. Like a balloon stuffed with wet rice, and the rice was eggs. Hundreds of white eggs in slime, spraying everywhere, all over the ground, all over me. No kill notification. The thing had already been dead. It had been a nursery with legs, and the system rubbed it in. You are infected. Body paralyzed. Reaction speed down 30%. Then the buzzing came back, and the black cloud rose off the trees, and I got my formal introduction to the Mind-Eater swarm. 100 flying things acting as one brain, and my weapons went right through the cloud like arguing with smoke. They latched on. 1 damage here, 1 damage there, and a slow siphon on my sanity with every bite, and I understood exactly how that swollen man had ended his career. Not killed, drained, hollowed, and rented out. Fire fixed them. Fire fixed them beautifully. 1 fireball into the cloud, and it crackled like a bag of popcorn with ambition. 10 experience a swarm. Problem, I had 7 wood left, and this forest held enough swarms to audit my entire economy. So I grabbed the dead player's loot orbs on the way out, and in the pile, along with wood, stone, and a stat boost pendant, was 1 first-level flame crystal. The exact missing ingredient for my furnace blueprint. Sometimes the universe just hands you the receipt. 14 stone short. I sold 3 eye fruits in the trade channel, had the stone in under a minute, and hit build on the furnace while standing in a forest full of things that hated fire. The furnace converted. My version was not a furnace. Use your body as the furnace, the system said. Flames burn within you. Immune to ordinary fire. Add fuel to activate burst mode. And then I lit up. Fire rolled out of my skin and over my clothes and did not hurt at all. And every insect within arm's reach snapped and popped and rained down cooked. I stood in the middle of a monster forest, burning like a sinner, laughing with actual fire coming out of my mouth, and decided to test burst mode, because obviously, and shoveled 20 wood into myself. The forest lit up like a stadium. A pillar of flame went off me straight into the sky. 20 seconds of personal supernova, and everything airborne within reach just stopped existing. Kill chimes stacked on kill chimes. Level 3. The Crimson Badge drank the whole massacre and unlocked its first growth stage, 5 Constitution, with a progress bar asking for more. Outside the woods, the entire seminar audience watched a column of fire rise out of the trees and quietly updated their theology. I walked out the far side with a pocket full of insect eggs, which the system swore were clean, no side effects, cook and eat. Finally, a food item in this world that wasn't actively hostile. The eggs tasted like eggs, 10 out of 10, would loot nursery again. Behind me, the braver tourists finally crept into the woods to investigate the fire pillar, found the burned clearing, the cooked remains of an entire insect civilization, no bodies, no survivors of whatever had happened, and no explanation, and filed their report to the chat with trembling thumbs. Whoever fought here won, they concluded, against that, alone. The seminar crowd outside quietly adjourned. Zhao Gong's recruitment speech gained a new closing line about the dangers of solo play, delivered while everyone present thought about the same anonymous someone, and the someone in question was 2 hills away, eating eggs. Around noon, I found building ruins, and, on top of them, a white treasure chest, and while I was climbing up to it, a voice below yelled, "Don't move, step away from the chest." I looked down into the barrel of a gun. An actual gun, wrapped in black vines, with a glass tube of red liquid where the magazine should be. Day 2 of the apocalypse, and somebody was already packing a rifle. The gambling wheel had winners other than me, apparently. Then the gunman got close enough to read my name tag and nearly dropped the thing. Boss Li Wei. It's me, your customer, Chen Hao. Of course it was Chen Hao. The man apologized so hard I thought he'd sprained something, insisted the chest was mine, and then, since we were both there, produced 2 boxes of instant noodles and invited me to lunch. And I want you to understand the scene. Gray apocalypse, monster forest smoking on the horizon. 2 grown men sitting on rubble, slurping pickled cabbage noodles cooked over my personal wizard fire, trading insect eggs for meat like kids swapping snacks. He warned me that players had started hunting players for the encyclopedia bonus, and to watch my back traveling alone. He watched me conjure a cooking fire out of thin air and processed it with remarkable speed. Is that a level 2 shelter thing? And I gave him my patented non-answer. More or less, you'll see. He offered to join me, got refused, took it well. He decided, unilaterally, that boss was too formal and he'd be calling me Brother Ling from now on, a nickname built out of my name, and I let it stand, which, for me, is practically a hug. He asked me to call him if I ever had info to sell. Somewhere in there, without either of us signing anything, the apocalypse handed me the closest thing to a friend it had in stock. The other recruitment attempts that week had less charm. Gao Feng slid into my messages proposing we become sworn brothers, actual phrasing, so we could look out for each other forever, and I replied, "Sorry, I don't like men," and he never quite recovered the thread. Zhao Gong sent a genuinely polite pitch about unity against the darkness, and got my standard, "I can barely protect myself, I'd only be a burden," which he was gracious enough to pretend to believe. And a self-described college student offered to be my full-time porter in exchange for food, equipment, and protection. A job listing where I provided the food, the equipment, the protection, and apparently the job. The apocalypse had a gig economy, and everyone wanted the same gig, being near me when things exploded. The chest, by the way, held knee pads that boosted my jump by 30% and announced every landing with a loud bang. This world's blacksmith had a design philosophy, and that philosophy was pranks. I fed my body orchard all afternoon, and by evening, the seed hit a growth milestone and sprouted into a sapling. Somewhere inside me, roots wrapped comfortably around my spine, and the tree paid its first rent. The system called it the Eye of Investigation. A third eye split open on my forehead, looked at the nearest tumor, and printed the creature's entire stat sheet into my mind. Level, health, strength, everything. Every gamer knows this ability. It's appraisal. It's the scan skill. It's the difference between fighting a health bar you can see and swinging into the dark. In a world where every monster was a jump scare with hidden stats, my creepy internal fruit tree had just handed me the single most quality of life ability in the genre. I patted my own forearm. Good tree. Who's a good tree? The stone kept piling up, so I upgraded my walls from wood to stone, and my skin quietly became rock that shaved 10 damage off everything and sometimes stunned whoever touched me. Then I found a pool and a chest beside it, and that's where the day's second act started, because 2 players had found it at the same time as me, and one of them could turn invisible. I didn't know that part yet. What I saw was one twitchy guy with a mohawk, name of Zhou Ming, yelling that the chest was theirs, and then stuttering to a halt when he read my name. What tipped me off was his eyes. He kept glancing at empty air, the way you glance at a friend, and the empty air kept not being anything. Either this man had an imaginary bodyguard, or something was standing next to him that I couldn't see. I took my chest loot and left, and let them think I noticed nothing. They followed me. All afternoon, at a careful distance, while I wandered scenic and aimless, because the one thing they wanted was to see where my shelter was. Find the house, wait for the owner to leave, smash the house, collect a free death. Solid plan. Textbook. Absolutely useless against a man whose house has a heartbeat. When the 2-hour night warning sounded and they still hadn't peeled off, I sat down, made a campfire, and grilled eggs in front of them for half an hour, just to watch the invisible man's patients file for divorce. Then I got up, stretched, and charged them at a full sprint out of nowhere. Both of them bolted like startled deer, which, for the record, is not the behavior of innocent passersby. Halfway through the chase, the 2 silhouettes merged into one. The invisible friend had picked his buddy up, or hidden him, or whatever the trick was. Then the remaining one turned and came at me. Fine, let's see the act. Zhou Ming whipped out a shield, and behind my swing I heard him scream, "Save me!" Not at the sky, at a spot. A very specific spot of empty air, and his eyes pointed at it like a signpost. So when my skullcracker hit his shield and the shield detonated into shrapnel, I watched the shrapnel. And the shrapnel did something wonderful. Half of it froze in midair, stuck in something invisible, and drops of blood appeared out of nothing and pattered on the dirt. There you are. I lunged at the bleeding air with the scimitar, got a piece of an arm, heard a very visible scream, and then the wounded nothing scrambled off into the dusk, dripping. Invisible, yes. Untouchable, no. His buddy Zhou Ming stayed behind, sitting in the dirt with his legs done, and rolled over on his boss faster than any interrogation I've ever seen. Name, Guo Peng. Power, invisibility, from the gambling wheel. Location of his shelter, delivered with directions and landmarks. The interrogation itself was a formality with excellent production values. I asked, he answered before the question mark landed. Who's your partner? Guo Peng. Why can't I see him? He turns invisible. Got it from the gambling wheel. Where's his shelter? And here, Zhou Ming didn't just tell me. He drew me a verbal map with landmarks, annotated, eager, correcting his own directions twice for accuracy, informing on his boss with the diligence of a star employee. It turned out his own pockets were empty by design. Everything he looted went straight to Guo Peng, the whole partnership being Zhou Ming drawing attention up front, while the invisible man did the actual killing from behind. The victim who'd reported Zhou Ming in chat had accused the only half of the operation he could see. In a way, Zhou Ming was a scapegoat with a pulse. In another, more accurate way, he'd volunteered. Then he asked, hopefully, whether he could join my team now. I looked at this man, who had betrayed his boss in under a minute, and offered his services to the interrogator, and asked what use I could possibly have for a henchman with that resume. Night was coming. And I am not proud of the next part, but I'm not ashamed of it either, because I needed to know something, and Zhou Ming owed the universe some data. I stayed with him while the eye rose. He wasn't in a shelter. The gaze found him almost immediately, and I watched, and I learned what happens when this world stares at a man until his sanity account hits 0. First came the fear, the ordinary humankind, while the ring of the moon's outline brightened overhead, and he bargained with me in a smaller and smaller voice. "Brother, it's getting dark. Please, let's go." I watched and said nothing, and my silence scared him worse than any threat, because a man who isn't running from the night stops reading as a man. By the time the eye fully opened above us, he'd stopped talking to me entirely. He laughed first. Then he saw something in the sky, something that was not the eye I saw, something that turned his fear into ecstasy. Then his body started changing, and his skin split, and what was growing underneath had never been in any anatomy textbook. And I gave him the lollipop before the change finished, and I'm going to insist that was mercy, because it was. He got to die with a human name. The other thing wouldn't have. So now I knew. Sanity was not a mood stat. Sanity was the wall between you and becoming a monster in this world's zoo. 0 means recruitment. Then I went to visit Guo Peng because he'd bled on my evening and knew where I might sleep. And men like that don't retire. His shelter sat in a nice quiet cluster, firelight glowing through the cracks. I knocked. From inside came a very alert, "Who is it?" And I answered in Zhou Ming's voice, pitched high and desperate. "It's me! Open up!" The pause that followed was a man doing arithmetic with numbers he did not like. "It's night," his logic said. "Zhou Ming can't be alive," his logic said. "Li Wei can't be here at night," his logic said. "Nothing survives outside at night." "Which leaves," his logic concluded with a gulp, "a ghost." I let him marinate in that. Then I said, in my own voice, "I want your dog life," and started renovating his front wall with the lollipop. He did the smart, desperate thing, went invisible, snuck out the door to flank me. And it would have worked, except invisible men still have weight, and the soil around his shelter was soft, and I'd been watching fresh footprints stamp themselves into the mud one at a time, walking a wide, careful circle around me. I let him get all the way behind me. I let him raise whatever he was raising. Then I turned and broke both his arms with one swing. And I have to walk you through the deduction chain that got him out that door, because I reconstructed it afterward from what he screamed, and it's beautiful. Standing inside, hearing Zhou Ming's voice, he reasoned, "Zhou Ming can't have escaped Li Wei, so this is either Zhou Ming's ghost, a monster, or Li Wei himself. Can't be Li Wei, nobody travels at night. Can't be a monster, it's still the protection period. Therefore, logically, ghost." This world had broken his sense of possibility so thoroughly that a haunting was his most rational option, and he prepared for a ghost and got a landlord dispute instead. Credit where due, he went out with commitment. When the trap closed, when his arms were gone and his stealth was blown, and his own deduction lay in pieces around him, he pulled the last item off his checklist, screamed that if he was dying I was coming along, and detonated a red cube of actual TNT point blank. The blast flattened his own shelter, dug a crater, and redecorated the neighborhood in ash. I watched it from 60 meters away, standing where my blink had dropped me the moment his hand twitched. 6-hour cooldown, spent well. I walked back through the smoke to collect my inheritance, and the whole regional chat spent the night arguing about the explosion, and whether it was connected to last night's forest fire, and what kind of monster was loose out there. The chat spent that night on forensics, and the leading theory, I am quoting, was, "Whose gas cylinder exploded?" Followed by, "Who here has a gas cylinder?" Followed by a fight about whether the fire 2 nights ago and the explosion tonight were connected. Followed by the inevitable, "If they're connected, is it that Li Wei guy?" Followed by the counter-argument that no one man could be both a forest fire and a bomb. I have never agreed with a wrong conclusion so warmly. By morning, a crowd of sightseers had gathered at the crater, and a local player treated them to a completely invented eyewitness account, wailing in the dark, a terrible cry, then the boom, clearly some self-detonating monster, and the crowd shivered and looked over their shoulders and swallowed it whole. The truth, that their region's #1 had knocked on a door wearing a dead man's voice, would have been worse for morale anyway. Let them have the monster. I was the monster. Everyone left satisfied. The loot included wood, stone, iron, and one deeply weird black statue, palm-sized, a tentacle with an eye on it that wanted a sacrifice of 500 health points and promised a reward. 500 health would kill every player in the region except me. For me, it was an expensive dinner. I fed it, watched the statue flush red and mutter in a language that made my skin crawl, glanced up at the moon mid-ritual, and caught the eye up there looking swollen and wrong for exactly 1 heartbeat. Sanity -1, no explanation. This world never explained. Then the statue crumbled to dust and paid out. New ability, sacrifice. Burn my own health for a surge of raw power, no cooldown, priced in blood. For a man with the biggest health pool in the region and a badge that got stronger the more he bled, this was less an ability and more a business model. Somewhere out there, something had just accepted my 500 health points as an offering, and I had accepted its power as a payment, and neither of us had asked the other's name. I'd like to tell you that bothered me. Honestly, it felt like the first honest transaction this world had offered. I was level 3, I was fireproof, my skin was stone, my house was my body, my tree was growing, and my customer base was traumatized but loyal. Day 2, complete. Day 3 opened with the system announcing an early nightfall as a reward for the survivors, which is like your boss announcing a pay cut as a team-building exercise. The chat rioted. I went hunting because the last day of newbie protection was not a day to waste, and my hunting ground of choice was a fog-drowned field of giant boulders where a human head had recently rolled up to my feet like a bowling ball with opinions. The thing that had thrown it came at my back a second later, fast, out of the mist, and my new scan eye caught it mid-leap. Ghoul, level 2. A hunched, hairless thing shaped like a hyena's nightmare about people, knees bent backward, mouth split to its ears. Stronger than anything I'd fought, faster too, and my stat sheet ate its lunch anyway. I cracked its skull with the candy, collected the kill chime, and got a bonus prize. You killed a ghoul, said the system. You are now cursed by it. The curse gave me a craving for flesh and a countdown. Kill 5 ghouls and it lifts. Kill fewer and I got to keep the craving. Which meant this whole species ran the world's most aggressive loyalty program. 5 stamps and your sanity back. And every stamp came with the same curse, stacking deeper. By ghoul number 2, I was catching myself sniffing the air near the bodies. By number 3, my own brain had started pitching snack ideas I refused to repeat. And I was walking with the specific, stiff dignity of a man ignoring an inner voice with a megaphone. The Lamb song got a lot of playtime that afternoon. I wasn't the only one in the boulder maze that day either. Sound carries strangely in fog, and at one point I overheard an entire team meeting happening 2 rocks over. Gao Feng, the recruiter from chat, out with 2 of his minions, and one of the minions had caught the ghoul curse, and the management style on display was something to behold. The cursed guy kept whimpering that he couldn't take it, and Gao Feng kept tossing him lumps of raw tumor meat the way you toss a dog treats. There you go, eat up, hang in there, buddy. You're our designated curse holder, just 5 more ghouls. The poor guy would fall on each lump like it was salvation, and his teammates would take 1 synchronized step back, and then Gao Feng would pat his shoulder from maximum arm's length and promise him another lump if he behaved. Later, they spotted a hunched shape moving through the fog on all 4s at unreasonable speed, and their tactical assessment, delivered in 3 panicked whispers, was that it was a brand new species of ghoul that had learned to stand up, and they let it pass unchallenged. That was me. I was the new species. I'd have introduced myself, but the curse had my jaw clenched around the Lamb song, and I wasn't opening that door for anyone. And here's where it got interesting. At curse level 4, I started hearing a call. Not sound, direction. Something out in the boulder maze was pulling at the cursed part of me like a hook in a fish. So instead of cleansing the curse, I grabbed my 5th ghoul, cut off its escape options, and dragged it along alive as a walk-in cure while I followed the pull. 20 minutes of maze later, the boulders opened into a ring of standing stones with an altar in the middle, a treasure chest beside it, and carvings of crawling figures all over the rock. I killed my portable cure first, felt the craving pop off my brain like a leech, and opened the chest. Inside, a crafting recipe for a ghoul charm, 12 fangs required, and I had exactly 12 in my pockets from the afternoon's work. The charm made me permanently immune to the ghoul curse, and, better, it let me spend 5 lumps of meat to summon my own ghoul for 10 minutes, a rental attack dog. The chest also coughed up a sanity potion, 3 whole points of mind in a bottle, which in this world was rarer than mercy. The altar itself had 1 line of flavor text. Have you brought enough blood? I'd been carrying ghoul juice by the liter all day. So naturally, I poured it into the grooves and watched it crawl along the carved lines like it knew the way. And when the stone drank its fill, 5 ghouls came out of the mist at once and surrounded me. They arrived just in time. I'd been wanting to test the full stack. Furnace lit, badge burning, summoned ghoul out front as a decoy, and me in the middle, swinging candy and scimitar in opposite directions. One ghoul bit down on my leg and got a mouthful of flames for dessert. The pileup lasted maybe 2 minutes, and at the end of it I was level 4. The ghoul encyclopedia paid out its 5 points, and the ground started shaking. The altar's blood glow sank into the earth. The earth answered, and the system made a region-wide announcement with 3 exclamation points in its voice. Special creature discovered, giant ghoul. Challengers will receive an attribute reward. The crack in the ground birthed a claw first, pale and wrong-jointed, big as a door. Then the rest followed, 5 meters of ghoul, and my scan eye gave me the bad news in clean font. Level 3, 1200 health, strength 30. My strength was not 30. This was the first thing in this world with a bigger health bar than mine, and it smelled like the space itself was rotting around it. And then the system, bless its twisted heart, did something that told me a lot about who its favorite was. It scanned the arena, found exactly 1 challenger, and handed me a permanent buff called Courage of the Lone Wolf. Facing horrors alone, all stats up 10%, sanity resistance up. The world had a bonus track for people with no friends, and I'd been speedrunning it since day 1. The fight opened with mutual disrespect. It charged me like a runaway armored truck. I charged it back with my summoned ghoul peeling off to flank, and our first exchange settled the physics. My candy and my blade hit its hide for numbers in the 40s, numbers I hadn't seen since day 1, because the thing had its own version of my rock skin. Its counter-swat, 1 backhand, sent me flying into the dirt hard enough to bounce, and the only reason the landing didn't make headlines is that I'd already ordered my decoy ghoul to the impact zone, and the loyal little horror got there in time to be my mattress. 10 out of 10 service. No survivors on the mattress. I got up out of the dust, smiling, cracking my neck, and the giant did something I treasure. It tilted its head. Genuine confusion on a face built exclusively for hunger at the sight of its dinner standing back up in a good mood. I told it conversationally that instead of wasting all that muscle on attacks, it should try sacrificing something for power. That's where the real returns were. It didn't speak the language. The advice was for me anyway. Then I stopped being economical. Sacrifice. 300 health, gone, and my arms split and sprayed, and the power came back double, all stats surging, and something extra rode in with the trade. My weapons caught fire, and the fire was gray-green and wrong, and the system called it rot flame. Whatever was on the other end of my sacrifices had upgraded my order. The first cut I landed with that flame tore off 256 health and kept eating. -5, -5, -5. The wound spreading like mold and fast forward, while the giant howled and rolled and tried to put out a fire that wasn't fire. At 1/3 health it stopped rolling, stood up, and stared at me, and the world blinked. Suddenly the rot flame was on me, my arms, my legs, my whole body wearing the gray-green death I'd given it, and the fear came up my spine like ice water. And I did the thing this world kept teaching me. I checked the receipts. 2 notifications, unread. You are gripped by fear. Sanity -1. Fear erosion. Its last trick wasn't claws, it was a lie, and my body wasn't burning at all. Angry is a fuel. I crossed the arena while its illusion died in my eyes, and hit it with everything left in my arms, and the announcement rolled 3 times across the region, while the biggest thing in the zone came apart at my feet. First player to slay a special creature. The chat produced its finest work yet. Somebody insisted I had to be a whole team pretending to be one guy. Somebody else started a rumor that Giant Ghoul was weak. A third party test drove the theory and stopped posting. The cleanup was almost domestic. I stood in the wreckage of the stone ring, patching myself with the repair skill, 20 wood per gulp of health, watching wounds zip closed like the world's most expensive tailoring, while the altar's carvings slowly drank themselves pale again. The stone's status line updated to refill when dry, which meant the giant was a renewable resource, a boss on tap for anyone with enough ghoul juice and nerve. And when voices came echoing through the maze toward the announcement's coordinates, I ghosted out the far side and left the arrivals a corpse, some scorch marks, and a mystery. The loot was a career change. A 2-meter blade the system called the corpse cleaver, 4 cutting edges, no blunt side, strength +7, and a sharpening mechanic that used dead monsters as whetstones. Flawling gloves that boosted my speed by half when I ran on all fours, which came with a dignity tax I chose to pay, because fast is fast. A blueprint for an equipment recycler, a vial of the giant's distilled essence that promised 2 points to every stat if I could keep my mind through the side effects, and rumor said one drinker had turned into a ghoul, which is why I drank it, humming the Lamb song at combat volume. My brain melted, the world went smeared, something in me wanted to run on all fours forever, and the Lamb won. +2, everything. The song remains undefeated. And one more thing in that pile, an ability shard, 1 of 3. Collect the set, get a random skill. The apocalypse had a gotcha, and I was already saving up. The first kill pack topped it off with the single strangest item I owned, a fishing rod called the Anything Rod. Luck +10 and -10 at the same time, 3 casts a day, catches anything, including monsters. The flavor text said, I can catch anything except fish. I looked at this cursed piece of sporting equipment and felt a deep premonition that it was going to define my week. The recycler blueprint converted the second I built it, and my version was called Equipment Absorption. Feed me gear, and after a few hours of digestion, the gear's stat bonuses became mine, permanently, side effects not included. My body was now a furnace, a farm, a fortress, a teleporter, and a pawn shop. I fed it the rage scimitar as a welcome snack. Then I did what any respectable monopolist does after soloing a raid boss. I wrote the strategy guide and put it on the market for 100 units of material per copy. Buy as a team, split the cost, learn its attacks, its stats, its weaknesses, everything. Gao Feng bought the first copy and started assembling a raid. And I know how his afternoon went before that purchase, because his team reached the stone circle while I was still in the neighborhood, and fog carries sound. They walked into the aftermath, the melted giant, the scorched ring, the ground still steaming, and did forensics out loud. Gao Feng counted his own survivability against the claw marks and arrived at, I'd last maybe 4 hits. One of his minions, staring at the loot-stripped corpse, floated the idea that whoever did this must be wounded and worth robbing. I got to hear Gao Feng slap his own subordinate in real time. The lecture that followed, at volume, ran 3 points. First, they had no grudge with me. Second, if that person had backup, they'd be delivering themselves as food. Third, what exactly was your plan against something that solos this? It was the most sensible risk assessment I'd heard in this world, and it came from a man whose other hand was still holding curse treats. I nearly sent him a coupon. Zhao Gong bought the second copy for his commune. The altar out there could be refilled, and the giant resummoned. And suddenly, Region 104 had its first dungeon, its first raid teams, and its first walkthrough author collecting royalties on all of it. The chat debated the guide's price for an hour. Expensive, outrageous, predatory. And then somebody asked the debaters how much their lives cost, and the orders resumed. The world tried to kill me on a subscription model. I countered by opening a gift shop. The Anything Rod got its debut at a black pool of standing water. First cast, a battered crate with 20 wood inside. Not bad. Second cast, and I swear on my stat sheet this is real, I reeled in a pair of used black stockings. Item type, tool. Effect, the smell is strong enough to snap you out of dizziness or confusion with a small chance of lung problems. Duration of smell, 30 days. I held this biohazard at arm's length, listed it in the trade channel for 10 wood as a joke, and it sold in under 2 seconds. 2 seconds. Player number 7941, whoever you are, I have questions and I never want them answered. I also learned an important market lesson that day. I should have charged more. Third cast, the rod bent double, the whole pool bulged, and I hauled out something the size of a car. It hit the bank with a soft, heavy sound, and the temperature dropped, and my sanity meter flinched just from looking at it. An egg. Sort of. A dark red, angular, twisted egg that also looked like a heart if the heart had been designed by committee in the dark. Where it touched the ground, red film crept outward like spilled paint that had opinions. My scan eye bounced right off it, which meant the thing inside outleveled me by 3 or more. I threw a rock at the red film and watched the film eat it. So, I'd gone fishing and caught a sealed boss. In my own neighborhood. With my luck stat. I did something then that I almost never do. I asked the chat for help. There's an egg-shaped thing by the low pool. Anyone know what it is? And the region reacted the way a small town reacts when the local billionaire asks to borrow a ladder. There's something Li Wei doesn't know? Is this a test? Is it a trap? Is he finally human? One brave soul announced he lived nearby and would go look, on the logic that if he identified it first, he'd officially be smarter than me. I wished him luck and relocated at speed. The next day, the consensus from a dozen very careful field trips came back. Nobody knew, nothing could scratch it, and it ignored you completely unless you touched the red film, in which case you got a preview of your own funeral. The region collectively adopted the policy I'd already pioneered: don't touch the egg. The egg became a landmark. People gave directions by it. Turn left at the unknowable horror, can't miss it. I did the responsible thing, posted its location in chat so no idiot would poke it in ignorance, and left with the specific walk of a man who has decided today is not the day. The egg stayed by the pool, humming to itself. Remember the egg. The egg is not done with this story. The mimic almost got me the next morning. A treasure chest sitting in open grass with two long-dead players beside it, which in hindsight was the entire crime scene photo, and I still walked up and put my hand on the lid because a chest is a chest. The lid grew teeth and took my whole forearm to the elbow. Rock skin held, furnace lit, and the chest let go of my arm the way you let go of a curling iron. Scan said, treasure chest monster, level 4, strength 30, agility 5. Strength of a truck, speed of a couch. I introduced it to the cleaver, and it paid out like a real chest. Cola, a strength ring, and a bottle of solvent that melted flesh on contact for 30 minutes. Even the fakes in this world dropped loot. I respected the commitment. Then the sky started going out. Early nightfall, the system's little reward, except this time no eye rose to light the world. Just dark, coming down like a blanket over a bird cage, and in that dark, Region 104 finally cracked. 3 days of newbie protection were ending. Half the region hadn't scraped together the 100 wood for a level 2 shelter, and the ones who had were sitting pretty in upgraded cabins with fire. The chat went from bickering to open class war in about 10 minutes. You could watch the descent live, time-stamped. First the begging, brothers, lend me 20 wood, I'll repay you tomorrow, I swear on my life. Then the refusals, some polite, some with commentary about who'd been napping while others gathered. Then the philosophy, one cheerful ghoul of a man typing, that this world was just natural selection, and the ones who couldn't find 100 wood in 3 days deserved the night. And then the reply that ended the debate and started the war. If I can't survive, none of you will. Posted once, liked by dozens, and the mob picked up torches. That night, players with level 1 cabins swarmed players with level 2 cabins all across the region. The upgraded owners couldn't leave their shelters to fight properly because an abandoned shelter was a soft target and a dead shelter was a dead owner. So they defended from their doorways while mobs pried at their walls, and the night filled with the sound of neighbors renegotiating society. In the chat, the two sides live narrated the siege at each other. Die together then, typed the have-nots. You rabid dogs, typed the haves. Level 1s, assemble, someone posted. We're already through his wall. And under the eye of a moon that watched all of it with what I can only describe as professional interest, Region 104 spent the last night of its beginner protection eating itself. Burn the fancy houses, take their stuff, drag everyone down into the same mud. I sat on a rise and watched fires bloom in the dark like ugly flowers, listening to the chat scream, and a mob of red-eyed looters found me there, alone in the open, guarding no cabin at all. They saw my name and got excited. Li Wei has supplies, kill him. I put out my flames and let the dark have me. They stood in the sudden black, blind, packed together, and I went through them like a rumor. It took less than a minute. The system chimed politely with each one, and their pooled loot came to 145 wood, which told me these geniuses had been sitting on almost enough material to just upgrade their own cabins. They didn't want shelter, they wanted the fire to spread. Then the real night rose, the eye came up, and its gaze swept the field, and everyone still outside a shelter, all those rioters caught mid-loot with their sanity already in the red, started changing. The night filled up with things that used to have names, and the newbie period ended not with a bell, but with a chorus. I used the riot's leftovers to hit shelter level 3, and this one was a leap. 50 more constitution, health past 1300, and a new conversion that made me put down my food. The refining function, some crafting station for normal owners, became endless absorption. I could now draw attribute fragments directly out of monster corpses. Kill a thing, drink a decimal of its stats, forever. Every corpse in this world had just become a protein shake, and I had the only straw. The upgrade menu also wanted something called a crystal core for level 4, a material nobody in the trade channel had ever seen. I filed that under future problems and went shopping instead, because the trade channel had sprouted something interesting, a mid-grade weapon listed by Xiao Mei. The Fear Club, 10 strength, equipable only by players whose sanity had already dropped below 80. In other words, a premium weapon for the mentally compromised, which is why it was priced like scrap. Nobody sane could wield it, and nobody unhinged enough to wield it should be trusted with it. Except my pawnshop stomach didn't care about equip conditions, it just digested the stats. I messaged her, opened with a critique of her cursed inventory. She countered that the strength bonus spoke for itself. We haggled like professionals over an item we both knew only I could use, and I paid with my retired crying lollipop, plus a promise. Somewhere in that exchange, she also dangled a lead on another special creature, location known only to her, half shares on the loot if I did the killing, and I agreed before she finished typing. The stick went down my throat that night. 10 strength by morning, no strings, no madness, no club. Best cursed purchase of the season. She'd sold me a ghost, a curse, and a cursed stick by then. Whatever she had in stock next, my calendar was open. Morning brought the end of the tutorial, and the system celebrated by dumping 3 announcements on the region at once. A leaderboard with my name on top at level 5, and the rest of the top 10 was the region's first census of its monsters. Liu Cheng at 4, a name most of the chat had never heard, which sent everyone scrambling to figure out who'd been leveling in total silence. Chen Hao at 4, my noodle friend, quietly 3rd, look at him go. Gao Feng, Zhao Gong, Xiao Mei, scattered down the list, plus strangers with stories nobody knew yet. The chat's reaction was its usual mix of worship and cope. The real experts have been hiding among us, and Li Wei is only 1 level up, I could catch that, posted by a man who then went outside and got chased back in by a meatball. A progress bar labeled Black Tide, ticking up from 0.3% towards something that read, when it hits 100, 2 days of eternal night. And a fresh disaster, effective immediately. Mist. The fog rolled in, and the temperature rolled off a cliff, and the rules of the world quietly rewrote themselves. In the mist, senses fail. In the mist, you'll see figures that aren't there. And the announcement's last line was the one that mattered. If someone greets you in the fog, be careful. It may not be a player. I got my proof within the hour. A figure hailed me through the gray, friendly voice, "Hey, wait up, I've got something to tell you." My radar said the shape was wrong. What came out of the fog was hip height, with a head like a beach ball, gray skin, marble eyes, and a mouth of needles, making human words with none of the machinery for it. Mist Goblin. It talked like a person the way a doorbell plays music, and something about that hit a nerve older than language. I split it down the middle and its head deflated like a stepped-on can. Sanity in this world was death by 1,000 greetings. The fog also hid statues. I found the first one standing in the gravel flats, a 2-meter human figure, weathered, faceless, and weirdly holy, and I was 3 steps into approaching it reverently before I noticed the voice in my head wasn't mine. Kneel, it suggested, warm as bathwater. Believe, and you will be safe. I dragged a blade across my palm and the pain snapped the trance like a rubber band. The statue's real face under my scan was a snarl of vines and madness. Forgotten statue, the encyclopedia called it later. A god that got contaminated, abandoned, and hungry. I broke every one I found that day, and one of them dropped a glowing knot of prayers, and with it I crafted the faith pendant, a necklace that could purge any mind-altering status once per use, for the bargain price of 1 sanity point per pull. A tool that traded pocket change for my soul back. In this world, that wasn't equipment, that was a seatbelt. Then I built the watchtower. For a cabin owner, an alarm system screams if anything comes within 50 meters. For me, the conversion chime rang and the entire world switched from standard definition to something no television has a setting for. Super perception, absolute awareness of everything in a 50-meter sphere around me, no eyes required. Every pebble, every breath of wind, every heartbeat in range, delivered straight to my brain in perfect detail. The mist that blinded the whole region became a decoration. Fog can't fool a man who doesn't need to look. I tested it on the way to meet Xiao Mei, and the fog's little theater fell apart in real time. Half the figures in the gray were nothing at all, pure hallucination, empty air wearing a shape. The other half were mist goblins doing their beach ball ambush routine, and now I could tell them apart from 50 meters and greet the real ones with a flying skullcracker before they finished their opening line. "Hi, who are you?" Whack. Community outreach. Xiao Mei in person turned out to be a girl in leather armor with a high ponytail and the loadout of a paranoid Christmas tree. Rings, bracelets, charms, pouches, a shield in one hand, and, I kid you not, my old crying lollipop in the other, which she'd bought off the trade channel at some point. She nearly attacked me twice during Hello. She'd clearly paid tuition to this world already. She was also, and this defined our entire relationship, constitutionally incapable of not selling me things. The special creature lived in a cave in the hills, at the end of a tunnel whose walls were increasingly covered in something between membrane and meat. Halfway in, wall growth started detonating around us, spraying corrosive juice and dropping evolved tumors on our heads. And while my rock skin laughed it off, Xiao Mei got chewed. She whipped out a spray that peeled the leeches off, sprayed me too without asking, paralyzing me for 3 seconds. You're welcome. And then, while we were both still standing in the venom drizzle, offered to sell me an antidote at 30 units, to her savior, mid-dungeon. I looked at this woman and understood that if the apocalypse ever ended, she'd have a chain of stores within the year. That deeper tunnel was a commitment test. Xiao Mei's ring cast the only light. My radar filled in the rest, and the walls transitioned from stone to membrane to something with a pulse, and the smell achieved structural integrity. She gagged twice and kept walking, which told me everything about why she was still alive in this world. At one point, my summoned ghoul, scouting ahead on a leash of simple commands, simply blinked out of my link mid-stride, not killed, subtracted, absorbed by something around the bend, and we both stopped and had a silent conversation about it, and kept going anyway, because the loot was that way. The final cavern was the kind of thing you don't describe at dinner. A vaulted room upholstered entirely in living tissue, a mound of what used to be people in the middle, and beside it, the landlady. Tumor Mother. A house-sized half-dome of muscle with a mouth like a flower and tentacles that kneaded flesh into balls and wrapped them into the wall cysts we'd been popping all the way in. My scan put her at level 5, 1800 health, strength 60. Xiao Mei made a noise like a kettle and lost half her sanity on the spot. The fight went sideways fast. Her tentacles hit like falling cranes, and my opening move, a jump slash with every buff I owned stacked on the cleaver, tore a wound in her flank that would have ended anything else in the region, minus 195, and still widening from the solvent I'd painted on the blade. Her answer was to exhale. A red spore mist filled the whole cavern, and the spores answered a question I hadn't asked, namely, what's worse than fighting a monster? Fighting a monster while one grows inside you. Strength and agility sagged 20% the moment the spores took root. I could feel something flexing under my own skin, and one of her tentacles caught me at half speed and slapped me into the dark like a badminton serve. And here's a moment I only learned about afterward, from the way she told the story. Xiao Mei, standing in the spore light with her own passenger butting inside her, watching the region's #1 player get swatted into a wall, ran the math every merchant runs. Option 1, cut losses, run, live. Option 2, spend more resources on a rescue that might fail. And the woman who charged me for antidote mid-dungeon chose option 2, was already moving toward my landing spot when I stood up out of the rubble on my own, lit head to toe in flames, and started walking back in. She stopped mid-stride. She says my silhouette at that moment took a year off her life. I say she was already at a jog when I got up, and neither of us has ever put the other version in writing, and that's the closest thing to friendship this world notarizes. The passenger problem I solved with hardware. Planted the cleaver in the ground, opened my own arm on its edge, and evicted my tenant by hand, which hurt exactly as much as it sounds, while Xiao Mei watched me like I was the monster in the room. Fair. Then she threw me a healing potion. Then, and I want this in the record, she told me the price. Meanwhile, the region's other economy had been maturing around us. Out at the ghoul boulders, the curse had spawned an entire service industry. To reach the good hunting, and eventually the giant's altar, you needed the curse's homing sense, and most players would rather die than carry it. So a new profession appeared, curse guides. Players who deliberately kept the ghoul curse at level 4 and hired out as living compasses, fee paid in materials and cooked food, sanity slowly build to the guide. It was the single most this-world job I'd ever heard of, professional sufferer, and business was steady. I didn't need one, my charm made me immune, but I tipped my metaphorical hat every time I blurred past a tour group and heard the guide swear at the crawling thing that kept spooking his clients. The mother's endgame was the wall itself. The whole cavern flexed, the floor grabbed my ankles, wet ropes of the ceiling came down, and both of us went into the wrapping, cocooned in muscle like leftovers. Inside the cocoon there was no monster, no cave. There was a warm bed, a soft blanket, a lazy morning with nowhere to be, and the thought, so reasonable, that I should just sleep in. That cocoon dream was the best trap this world had shown me yet, and what broke it wasn't willpower. It was the faith pendant burning against my chest, one sanity point down, and the sudden meat locker reality of where my body actually was. The exit plan cost 700 health. Sacrifice. The big red button and the rot flame answered again. Gray-green fire that turned my cocoon into steam and mulch and then went visiting. The mother caught it through her own tentacles, and a creature made of 1,000 meals learned what it's like to be one. When it was over, I was standing in the world's worst compost pile with single-digit strength left in my legs, and Xiao Mei's cocoon was sagging open, and her voice called to me from the fog, soft and worried. "Are you okay? Let me help you up." Except my radar said the person walking toward me had no heartbeat, and the real Xiao Mei was still unconscious in her cocoon 10 meters behind me. I said, "Sure, help me up," and let my summoned ghoul introduce itself from the shadows. The fake's head came off in a puff of fog and an echo of giggles. The mist had walked into a boss lair, put on my ally's voice, and tried to collect us mid-victory. That was the day I stopped thinking of the fog as weather. The real Xiao Mei woke up, saw the carnage, saw me upright in it, and revised some estimates. I was lying flat at the time, partly genuine exhaustion, partly negotiation posture, groaning about my terrible wounds until she donated 2 recovery potions unprompted, which saved me a fortune in self-repair materials. Don't judge me. She'd have invoiced a dying man. We understood each other. We split the mother's hoard by the deal, and she did something that recalibrated her file in my head. "You choose first," she said. "You did the killing, and I got the experience share just standing here." From the woman who charged her rescuer for antidote, an open first pick was practically a blood oath. I picked 4 of the 7, she took the rest without a word of haggling, and I steered the almond water into her pile on purpose. My half was a museum of bad ideas, a living scabbard, a lump of black muscle that swallowed weapons whole and spat them out at double draw speed, coated in paralytic drool, needs feeding, 5 meat a day. An egg-sized heart that boosted health if you survived eating it. A skill called inferior corruption that made enemies fragile if my sanity was already damaged, which it always was. The almond water, the sanity restorative, was the one I made sure she kept, and she looked at me like I'd broken some law of nature. Her sanity was visibly hanging by threads. Mine was load-bearing. Some trades you make with the scoreboard in mind, and some you make so your business partner doesn't start hearing statues. The scabbard took to my back like it had always lived there. I fed it meat, slid the cleaver into it, and watched it mold itself around the blade like a glove. Then it shifted its weight against my shoulder, the way a dog leans, and I caught myself patting it. I should have known right then. In this world, you don't adopt items. Items adopt you. That evening, the anything rod outdid itself. Cast 1, a rock. Cast 2, a lump of rot. Cast 3, a full human skeleton, hands folded politely over a yellowed page it had been guarding in death. The page was covered in characters that were almost letters, and when I looked at them too long, they started swimming. Actually swimming, wriggling across the paper like tadpoles, rearranging into a whirlpool, and images began forcing themselves into my head. Darkness, flesh, concepts my brain had no shelf for. The system's label was blunt. Forbidden item. Learning progress, 8%. Sanity draining while you look. I tore my eyes away at 60-something sanity, gasping like I'd come up from deep water, and the afterimage of understanding lingered anyway. True knowledge, the item description said, has life. This page was a textbook that studied you back. Every instinct said burn it. The rest of me pointed out that whoever finished this textbook would be able to do things this world hadn't priced yet, and the rest of me signs the checks. Into the inventory it went. We'd be seeing each other again. And we did, a few nights later, in an abandoned cabin during the first contaminated rain, black droplets drumming on the roof while I sat by a small fire and opened the page for round 2. This time, the reading had stage effects. The fire flickered with no wind. My own shadow on the wall stopped copying me and started performing, claws, fangs, interpretive menace. The characters danced in the firelight, and a voice like a demon reciting poetry unspooled in my skull, and my progress ticked up through the teens while my sanity paid the toll. And when I finally wrenched free at 20%, drenched and shaking, my shadow snapped back to normal like an employee hearing the manager return. That was the night I understood the page's pricing model. Every session went deeper, cost more, and gave more. And there was a version of me at the end of that curve who knew everything the page knew, and the open question, the one I chose not to examine by firelight in an abandoned cabin during poison rain, was how much of that version would still be me. I ate the mother's heart that night too, humming the lamb song through the hallucinations, and my flesh knitted faster ever after. My walls went from stone to iron next, 20 flat damage reduction, poison and burn durations halved, and for a minute during the upgrade, my whole body was rusted metal, which I caught my reflection doing and chose not to think about. That same night, Chen Hao pinged me, buzzing like a kid after a roller coaster. Ling, we did it. We took down the giant ghoul. His squad had run Gao Feng's raid on my guide, gotten tangled in the fog on the approach, pushed through after dark on pure torchlight and nerve, and walked out alive with a loot list he recited like a man reading his own wedding vows. And in that list, one item made me sit up. An ability shard, same type as mine. Every special creature dropped one apparently, and I was sitting on two. He offered to claim it with his team contribution points and trade it my way before I even asked, which is the kind of behavior that gets a man permanent discount status, and I paid him back with an emergency vial from my stock that could hold a dying man together for 5 extra minutes. Good trade. Between friends, the margins get weird. So my gotcha set completed, 3 fragments, 1 spin, and because I am who I am, I perform the spin while physically holding the anything rod in both hands, on the theory that its chaotic luck stat would tip the odds, standing alone in a field gripping a fishing rod like a lightning rod while a slot machine ran in my skull. Science? No. Results? The wheel landed on the highest rarity in the pool. The methodology speaks for itself. Nightmare. Quality, high. Effect. Every time you sleep, you will be hunted in your dreams. Survive with your mind intact and your sanity resistance grows forever. Fail, and the dream keeps you. The system had sold me a gym membership for my soul, payable nightly. And here's the private joke the system didn't know. Back on Earth, my hobby was lucid dreaming. Actual practice, actual technique. I had a reality check. Bend the index finger back to the palm. Impossible awake, easy asleep. I had exits. Hold your breath, or take a long fall. Both eject you to your pillow. I'd been training for this exact nonsense my whole boring life. I lay down on the roofless ground, closed my eyes, and clocked in. The dream put me on a raft in the middle of a dark, endless ocean under a dead sky. The smell of rot rolled off the water. Something moved in my stomach, and I vomited a black tentacle. And the tentacle kept coming, meters of it, tearing at my throat until I capsized into water that was full of its relatives, all swimming from my open mouth. Cold closed over me like a hand. I checked my finger. It bent flat to my palm. I held my breath and punched out and woke soaked in reeking sweat with my heart hammering and one thought echoing. That was night 1. That was the easy setting. Morning brought the black tide up to 18%, a chat full of cursing and my scabbard licking my neck for breakfast. It had a tongue now. I hadn't given it one, it just had one, and it wanted its 5 meat, and its little mouth stayed open until it got them. I stood in the fog getting extorted by my own luggage, paid up, and that's when Chen Hao pinged me. Ling, check the chat. The Thousand Eye Forest woke up. Every dormant tree in that grove had come online overnight, a whole forest of level 5 elites, 1,000 health apiece, red eye fruits swelling on every branch, and the region's bravest were circling the tree line drooling at the loot while the trees quietly repriced their lives. I got there in 10 minutes, and here's the thing about eye trees. Against players who couldn't see their stats, couldn't dodge root ambushes, couldn't tank a single grab, they were death. Against a man with a monster radar, weak point vision, a 2-meter cleaver, and fire in his skin, they were lumber with a health bar. I farmed that forest like a payday. Charge, dodge the roots by radar, cleaver into the trunk, 60 experience, kick the fruit into a sack, sharpen the blade on the stump, next. The first tree taught me the routine. Its roots burst up around me in a cage, and the root tips split open into red eyes that poured hate straight into my skull, resentment, loathing, the whole buffet, and my answer was a full-body flame burst that turned the cage into kindling and a mood into a mistake. After that, it was assembly line work. And when other teams got a tree down to a sliver and the roots grabbed their finisher, I'd flash through in a crawl sprint, steal the killing blow, and vanish into the fog, leaving them their loot and taking my experience. I got to hear one of those teams process it in real time. 3 guys, 1 strung upside down in the roots, screaming for help, 2 hacking at the trunk, and then a dark blur, a crash, a dead tree, and silence. Wait, who killed it? Didn't you? I was hanging upside down. How could I kill it? Then what was that? and from a safe distance in the fog, wiping sap off my blade, I listened to three grown men invent a cryptid rather than say thank you. To be fair to them, I did also take the experience points. Consulting fees. Somewhere in there, the chat invented a monster to explain me. Fast, low to the ground, makes a clattering sound, steals kills, shape of a crawling man, but obviously not a man. No man moves like that. They named it the crawling aberrant creature. Threads were written, sightings were mapped, bounties were discussed. I read the whole folklore of myself at lunch, eating stolen fruit, and made peace with my new species. Being a cryptid had zero overhead and excellent privacy. If anything, I leaned into the clatter. The encyclopedia unlocked mid-farm and dumped one detail that stopped my chewing. During an awakening period, it said, all thousand-eye trees jointly nurture a single special fruit. Premium grade, center of the forest. Premium. I'd seen low, mid, and high. There was a fifth shelf, and something was ripening on it right now, and every other player who'd unlocked the entry had just read the same line. I dropped my snack and started crawling. The center of the forest was a clearing around one tree 5 times bigger than the rest, and under it, a summit meeting. 5 players, and I knew the resume of every one. Xiao Mei, walking general store. Zhao Gong, the commune dad. A quiet guy named Zhou Haoming from the leaderboard. And 2 I'd only seen in rankings. Liu Cheng, the number 2 player in the region, whose eyes literally glowed blue, and his hype man, Guo Xuan, whose job appeared to be saying, Brother Liu is amazing at regular intervals. Somebody had burned an item to push the fog off the clearing, and they were all standing in the clean air, staring up at one fruit glowing red among the leaves, politely waiting for it to ripen and openly planning to race each other for it. They'd even agreed on rules. Fair competition, no murder, may the best climber win. The apocalypse had matured. 3 days ago, these people were robbing each other for firewood, and now they had sportsmanship, mostly because everyone present could make everyone else's death expensive. Zhao Gong tried to recruit me on sight, mid-handshake, like a man handing out flyers. Liu Cheng's hype man tried to recruit me on sight, for the other team, with the pitch that number 1 and number 2 together would be unstoppable, while his boss stood 3 steps away radiating cool, mysterious rival energy and pretending the recruitment wasn't his idea. I declined both with my standard line, I'd only drag you down, which nobody has ever believed and everybody always accepts. Xiao Mei, standing off to the side, muttered, I knew it, with the satisfaction of a woman winning a private bet. Then Gao Feng arrived late with Chen Hao and one more guy, and the summit gained its first personal beef, because the hype man took one look at Chen Hao and detonated. Chen Lao Wu, you stole my treasure chest! And Chen Hao, my mild, grateful, noodle-sharing Chen Hao, put his hands on his hips and answered, Stole? Skill issue. Want to settle it one-on-one? And I watched my first friend in this world offer to fight a stranger over a box, while Zhao Gong flapped between them going, Gentlemen, gentlemen, the fruit! And honestly, it was the most human 5 minutes this world had produced. 3 teams and 2 lone wolves, all pretending to watch the tree, all watching each other. The tree, meanwhile, drained 50 health per second from anything touching its trunk, which was the whole competition right there. Nobody could climb for long. Except that 50 a second against my health pool was a gym fee, and everyone present had watched my announcements roll for a week. The fruit's ripening bar crawled toward 100. The clearing went quiet. Somebody breathed too loud. At 96%, I jumped the gun and started climbing, and the whole summit screamed at once. Half of them followed on principle. Liu Chang launched off his partner's cupped hands like an acrobat. Xiao Mei went up on sticky gloves, and the great fruit race was on. 6 players scrambling up a tree that was billing us all by the second. Then the bar hit 100, and the tree opened its eyes. All of them. Every leaf split down the middle and rolled back around a red eyeball. Thousands. The trunk cracked open in seams and grew more. The ground below heaved as roots the size of trains woke up, and the system's scan came back with a name and a shrug. 10,000 eye tree, ancient subspecies, level 10. My scan couldn't even read its stats at first, and when it finally could, the numbers looked like typos. 8,000 health, strength 220. The polite summit dissolved instantly. The climbers got shaken off or fled, the ground crew started fighting for their lives in a cage of roots, and the tree's gaze came down on the 2 of us still climbing, me and Liu Cheng, like a searchlight made of migraines. My vision flickered. For 1 full second, I was looking at myself from outside, through one of the trunk eyes, watching a little figure with a meat scabbard cling to the bark. The pendant burned that away. Beside me, Chao Yang's blue glow was guttering, and the man pulled out a dagger and cut his own arm to stay sharp, and I felt a flicker of genuine respect. Same school. Ugly tuition. The roots came up the trunk after us like snakes up a drainpipe. They pierced my scabbard, then my side, and where they touched, the flesh started going wooden, little eye-shaped knots swelling under my skin, and I cut them out of myself mid-climb, one-handed, while holding on with the other. Chao Yang, clinging to the bark beside me, watched me do field surgery at altitude with an expression that traveled from horror through respect to a place with no name, then copied the method on a smaller scale, cutting his own arm to keep the tree's stare out of his head. For about 10 seconds, we were the only two sane creatures on a tower of eyes, bleeding on purpose, and something like professional courtesy passed between us. Then the tree escalated, the roots tripled, and he shouted the sane man's summary over the wind. Even if we grab it, we won't live to spend it. Let's go. And I said, you go first. And he looked at my face, concluded the region's number one had finally snapped, said as much out loud, and bailed. On his way down, he told the others I was done for. Reasonable diagnosis, wrong patient. Below me, the clearing had turned into a war documentary. The tree's waking pulse had blasted everyone's minds sideways, perspectives hijacked into random root eyes, and the ground crew was hacking through a thicket of grabbing wood to break out of the kill zone, dragging their stunned teammates. Zhao Gang bellowing formations. Guo Shen screaming for his brother Liu to descend faster. Chen Hao, and I heard this clearly through the chaos, yelling my name at the canopy. Not run, not help, just my name, with the furious tone of a man watching his one business contact climb into a blender. I went up the last stretch through a hailstorm of roots, with my blood mostly outside my body and my mind held together by pendant, lamb song, and spite. And I closed my hand around the 10,000 eye fruit. Every eye on that tree focused on me at once. The world turned red. Something vast tried to pour itself through my eyes into my skull, and the system's damage report was writing itself in real time, and my answer was the ace I'd been saving for 6 hours. Blink. 10 kilometers of space folded, and the tree's scream of frustrated foliage happened somewhere far behind me, while I face-planted into a meadow, torn, wooden in patches, memories that weren't mine ricocheting around my head like wasps. That last part was the problem. The tree's parting gift was a head full of foreign memories, flashes of lives and deaths I'd never lived, and no ability I owned would scrub them out. They came with the fruit. They were the fruit's receipt, so I pulled out the forbidden page and fought fire with arson. The tadpole letters swarmed up and ate the foreign memories on contact, knowledge against knowledge, and my sanity meter footed the bill for the crossfire. And when it was over, I lay in the grass at exactly 70 sanity, hollowed out and grinning. The page's progress bar had jumped. My mind was a war zone with 3 occupying powers, but the flag flying over it was still mine. The fruit was worth every drop. Effect 1, a permanent expansion of perception, and my 50-meter radar doubled to 100, a football field of omniscience in every direction. Effect 2, it fed my internal tree, and the sapling in my body gulped the leftovers, hit a growth stage, and paid out a second ability through my forehead. The Eye of Flaw. 4 new pairs of eyes up there now. Don't dwell on it. I don't. And when they open, every creature in sight gets a red dot painted on its weak point. See the flaw, hit the flaw, delete the monster. Paired with my scan eye, my skull was now a full tactical suite. My barber, if I ever met one again, was going to have questions. The others limped out of the forest alive, minus Zhou Haoming and one of Gao Feng's men who didn't. The tree kept their names. I checked the leaderboard that evening, and the empty slots had already closed up, the way water closes over a stone, and the chat had already moved on to arguing about whether the fruit had been real. I didn't correct them. 46 regular eye fruits from the day's farming went up for sale, and the legend of the crawling creature got a new chapter, and Region 104's most wanted cryptid went to sleep rich. Sleep, of course, was a work shift. That night's nightmare started on the raft again, then escalated into a dream inside the dream, a hospital room, a thin woman weeping at my bedside. "My son, you're finally awake." I turned to look at her, and she had no head. Just one enormous eye balanced on her neck, crinkled at the corners with joy. I went out the window without breaking stride. Falling wakes you up. So does the sheer nerve of this world trying the fake mom routine on me twice. Read the file. No mother, never had one. The orphan build has exactly one passive, and you keep walking into it. The next day's ruins paid for the therapy. My doubled radar swept through a collapsed building like an X-ray and lit up 3 buried treasure chests that no walking player could ever have found, sealed under rubble, their glow smothered. I dug like a man possessed. The white chest held snacks. The green one held 5 drops of pure Dettol, a cleansing item that restored 1 sanity apiece, and I drank all 5 on the spot, like a man doing shots at his own funeral reception. And the third chest glowed red, a color I'd never seen on a chest, and when I reached for it, it lunged off the ground and swallowed my head, whole head, in the chest. I want the record to show my weak. Inside, instead of teeth, there was an interface, and the interface explained the game. This was a flesh chest event, running simultaneously across every region in this world, hundreds of them, thousands. Every swallowed player could sacrifice health across 3 rounds. Highest total sacrifice wins the chest's treasure. Everyone else permanently loses their maximum health equal to whatever they bid. A cross-server auction where the currency was your own life, and the fine print was a wood chipper. And then my status loaded, and I read my listed maximum health, and inside the chest, privately, I started to grin. 274. The event had counted my base body and my equipment. It had not counted my shelter. All the constitution my walls and floors had ever paid me, invisible. The auction thought I was a wet paper bag, and my actual pool was over 1,400. The cross-region chat inside the event was already boiling, and it was my first look at the rest of this world. Hundreds of regions, thousands of players, all with a chest on their heads at the same time. Region 8744 was screaming about being eaten. Region 577 was cheerfully greeting everyone like this was a cruise mixer. Region 699 proposed the smart play. Everyone bid 1 point. Nobody loses anything. And Region 4 replied, sure, and then you bid 2 and rob us all, which settled that. Most players did bid the minimum, the correct coward's play. Then a loudmouth from Region 123 started trash-talking the entire multiverse, bragging he had health to burn and inviting anyone with a spare life to come test him. My first bid, 300, put me on top of the board and made several regions gasp in text form. Are all Region 104 players monsters? Somebody typed, and I chose to take that as a compliment on behalf of my neighbors. Then the leaderboard flickered, and Region 123's answer came down like a gavel. 500. And his commentary got worse. A bunch of idiots, he wrote. Arguing with me is just shortening your own lives. Sir, you are arm wrestling a building. Round 2, I healed up with materials, and this detail matters because between rounds the event allowed recovery items, meaning a player's true ceiling wasn't his health bar, it was his health bar times his wallet, and I owned the region's pharmacy. I bid 500 flat, quiet as a monk, tying his bravado without a word, and in Region 123, a large man with a chest on his head, I know this because he narrated it to the whole event later, started sweating. He had nearly 900 health from some agility conversion power, tops and everything he'd ever seen, and the anonymous nobody from 104 was matching him without commentary, and silence is expensive to read. He talked himself back off the ledge in public. He's bluffing. He dumped everything already. I'm at full strength. All in. Round 3, the finale. He emptied the tank, 974, and posted one final taunt about how anyone still fighting him was donating their lifespan to his victory. Then he watched my counter climb. 800, 900. The event chat went dead quiet. Thousands of players across 1,000 regions holding their breath at the same number. 974, tie. A single beat, just long enough for hope. 975, 1,000. Whatever chair he was sitting on in Region 123, I hope it was comfortable, because by his own team's account, the man slid out of it and did not immediately climb back. The audience, every one of whom had just permanently lost their bid to watch this, erupted into cheering for the anonymous monster from 104, half in awe, half in relief that I lived nowhere near them, and the system named me grand winner across all participating regions. The chest spat out 2 prizes and rotted away. A blueprint for a potion workshop, requiring 4 elemental crystals I'd never seen, and a living wall coating that needed 100 meat and 50 tumor corpses to build, which for a cabin meant self-repairing walls, and for me, when I later farmed the parts and built it, became living skin. Wounds closing on their own in minutes, scars erasing themselves. My body had a maintenance crew now. The Rod kept up its comedy streak that week too. One cast produced a living eyeball on spider legs, item class, living tool, combinable with other living tools. I fed it to my scabbard. The scabbard grew the eye on its side and started watching the world with it, swiveling, blinking, forming opinions. Another cast dragged up a curse instead of loot, a black triangle stamped into my arm, the curse of the non-returner. Terrible, tragic affliction. Cursed to feel dread when away from your shelter, cursed to feel safe only at home, sanity regeneration boosted while inside your shelter. While inside your shelter. I am inside my shelter. I am never not inside my shelter. The curse took one look at my whole deal and became a spa membership. Permanent sanity regen buff, zero downside, and somewhere the entity that designed that curse felt a disturbance it couldn't explain. A holy water bottle I fished up later could have removed it. I drank the holy water for the 10 sanity instead and kept my lovely curse. Best affliction I ever caught. The world kept moving underneath all this. A player named Wu Jing, the same quiet businesswoman who'd been selling torches to a region that didn't want them yet, started selling handmade maps that auto-drew wherever the owner walked, and the chat lost its mind at the concept of cartography. I messaged her, got quoted 150 units, opened negotiations on principle, and she countered before I finished typing. 10 of those iFruits you can't sell. They're overpriced anyway and dropping. You won't lose a thing. I stared at the message. She'd read my inventory, my market position, and my fruit surplus off the trade listings and built the counteroffer out of my own dead stock. I paid the 10 fruit out of respect. Somewhere in this region, that woman is going to end up owning everything, and the rest of us will be paying her rent in whatever currency survives. The map itself was parchment that inked itself as I moved, and my first look at it was humbling, my whole violent, legendary week drawn out as a drunken scribble across a fraction of a region that was mostly still dark. The black tide bar crawled through 30, 40, 50. The chat's daily mood settled into a rhythm, curse the system in the morning, trade at noon, panic at dusk. And the mist disaster leveled up, announcing a behemoth, a fog monster that the system openly described as unkillable. Just leave if you see it. Great patch notes. 5 stars. The behemoth itself made its debut while I was off-world getting baptized by a whirlpool, and I came back to a chat full of survivors processing it in real time. The ones who'd been at the edge of its passage described the fog itself coming alive, a shape inside the gray that their eyes refused to finish, and a wrongness that emptied their sanity bars from hundreds of meters out. Nobody who got a good look posted afterward. The system's official guidance remained a masterpiece of customer care. It cannot be killed. It cannot be stopped. If encountered, leave. Somewhere in my region, weather was migrating, and the emergency plan was, don't be under it. I added the behemoth to my list, in the special column for things even I wasn't shopping for yet. Meanwhile, I discovered what happens when you kill too many of the fog's children. After my Mist Goblin encyclopedia unlocked, the system informed me that the Mist's hostility toward me had increased. Not the Goblin's hostility, the Mist's. The weather now held a grudge, personally, against me, and the fog around me twisted into leering faces to prove it. I stood there while the entire sky's ground floor made faces at me and told it to get in line. I want it noted that at this point in my life, my enemies list included a forest, a moon, the fog, and an egg. The egg hadn't done anything yet. That's what made it the scariest one. The Potion Workshop blueprint sent me crystal hunting, and the crystals sent me to a canyon that Xiao Mei's mysterious paper flagged in exchange for a lifetime discount on my future potions, negotiated before I'd brewed a single one. That woman could smell a supply chain forming from across the map. The canyon was dead empty by day, and I nearly wrote the trip off before the obvious clicked. Half this world only exists at night. So I waited for the eye to rise, and the canyon floor lit up with growing crystals in 4 colors, and the ground opened, and the crystal farmers came out. Worms, 1/2 meter each, ringed like drill bits, mouths like blenders, some burning, some frosted, some armored in mud, some wrapped in little screaming winds. 20 of them minimum, all spitting their element at me at once, and their sales pitch was clear. The crystals charge from fragments, the fragments drop from us. Come and get them. A normal player would have died in the opening volley. I should mention the vest, by the way, a high-grade shirt fished out of a chest, stitched together from some creature's hide. It drank 10% of every hit I took and paid it back as healing. The redder it soaked, the less pain I felt, and the harder my hands worked, with a fine print clause about battle frenzy that I'd been treating as a rumor. The canyon is where the rumor came due. I stood in the fireworks with my iron skin and that vest, drinking deep, growing angrier and more powerful at the same time, because the vest fed on damage and the badge fed on my dropping health, and somewhere in the middle of it, my whole kit synchronized into something I hadn't planned. The Crimson Badge had been leveling with me the whole run, drinking every kill, and somewhere in that canyon its progress bar finally filled for good. Full unlock. Its finished form gave me 1 point of strength for every 100 health I lost, plus 1% of speed, attack, and reflex for every 1% of health missing. Read that again. My equipment's endgame design was, the closer to death, the closer to God. Growth item complete, the system noted, almost wistfully. No further evolution possible, like a proud parent at a graduation for cursed jewelry. The lower my health, the stronger and faster I got. The more the vest dyed red, the less pain I felt. The Eye of Flaw painted a red dot on every worm's third segment, and the cleaver found every dot. It stopped being combat and became rhythm. And when the last worm came apart, I stood in the crater, breathing smoke, dyed head to foot, buzzing with a chemical joy that had nothing sane about it, and I had just enough brain left to recognize the exit sign. The rage was billing my sanity. I purged it with the pendant, paid the point, collapsed into the weakness that followed like a hangover with interest, and lay among my fragments doing accounting. All 4 crystals charged, level 7. And a lesson filed in permanent storage, my berserker gear was a loan shark. Fantastic rates, read the fine print, always carry the pendant. The canyon had one more thing to say on my way out. As I pocketed the last crystal, the whole gorge shuddered, and a roar came up out of the rock from something that was not half a meter long, and every crack in the ground reopened at once, with fresh worms boiling up like the building's actual owner had come home and found the furniture moved. I did not stay to network. Whatever slept under that canyon and employed 4 elements worth of livestock, it went on the list, the long list, the list of things that would keep right under the tree and the egg. My list was becoming a zoning map of the entire region. The workshop built itself into me the next morning, and the conversion was the best one yet. Handcrafted potions. No lab, no cauldron, no waiting. I could take raw monster parts, mix them by feel, spend ability points, and skip the entire brewing process. The first experiments were comedy. Ground tumor plus egg fluid. Failure, 0.3% success rate, a puddle of pus that looked at me with more dignity than I deserved. Minced tumor, a pinch of dirt, a splash of worm juice, 3%. Add this, remove that, my campsite turning into a crime scene of failed soups, and every attempt taught the craft anyway, because that's how the skill worked. The system graded each mix and my hands learned from the grade. The success rate climbed all day, 30, 45, and then my ability points ran dry at 45%, and I lay on the ground yelling at the sky that 45% meant I just had to get lucky once. The sky declined to comment. Next morning, first fresh batch of ability points, third mix, the chime I'd been chasing, potion successfully made, and a few refinements later, the one that mattered. 100%. Recipe mastered. The world's first tumor potion, a healing brew that knitted wounds for 30 seconds with a mild numbing side effect. And here's the part that made it a brand. Mastering the recipe fixed the taste. The prototype had tasted like licking the inside of the monster it came from. The mastered version just tasted faintly of iron, and the system let me sign it. Description, carefully crafted by player Li Wei. I edited the label copy myself, added, exceptionally powerful restorative, essential for the injured, because if the apocalypse wasn't going to regulate advertising, I certainly wasn't going to start. I put my name on a health potion in a world with no doctors. You already know what happened. The first batch sold out while I was still typing the ad. The second batch sold out from the announcement alone, and the chat filled with the sound of latecomers discovering an empty shelf. What do you mean they're gone? I said I wanted 2. Boss, do bulk orders get a discount? You call 10 bottles bulk. Get in line. I posted the only customer service message my company would ever need. Stable supply daily, no reservations, watch the channel, and logged off to the sound of a region refreshing a storefront. Zhao Gong's commune placed the real order. The man came at me formally, on behalf of his whole team, offering 50 units per bottle, over market, plus goods from their treasury, and we spent a genuinely pleasant hour haggling like 2 carpet merchants. He showed me a mushroom that restored 3 sanity, and wanted 8 bottles for it, and I pointed out his miracle mushroom also poisoned the eater for 300 health, which would kill his entire team twice, and we landed at 4. Then his catalog scrolled one more item, and I stopped scrolling for him. A live, disembodied mouth on spider legs, talkative, uncontrollable, found in a chest, filed by his people under things we pretend we didn't open. His men found it unsettling. I found it to be scabbard food. My pet now had an eye and a mouth. The mouth babbled nonsense syllables around the clock. Abba, Abba, tireless, delighted, until I tied it shut with a tendon and it sulked. My luggage had a personality, and the personality was a toddler. The living wall coating deserves its own confession because the construction process was the least dignified hour of my career. The recipe wanted 50 tumor corpses, so I spent a day farming Tumor Hill, where half the region's casuals ground their levels, and the sight of the legendary crawling aberrant creature blurring between kills cleared the hill faster than any disaster announcement. 50 corpses went into my storage space being the only inventory in the region that didn't rot or complain. Then I dumped the whole morgue out in a clearing, hit build, and watched every corpse braid together into a paste that flowed up my legs and into my skin, and I stood very still and thought about the ocean, and then it was done, and my skin was smoother than it had been since middle school. Wounds sealed themselves in minutes now, scars erased overnight. I got beauty treatment from a mass grave, and I'd do it again. The alchemy skill also reopened an old business. My awakening potion recipe from the ghost days. The one that needed a rare catalyst stone now needed nothing but my own ability points, minced meat, and sewage, and the dormant eye trees still standing in the forest became a renewable resource. Pour a dose at the roots, step back, watch a boss monster boot up groggy and half strength, chop it down for lumber, fruit, experience, and corpse materials, repeat. I was force starting monsters like old lawnmowers and harvesting the results. And if farming your own boss spawns sounds like playing with fire, remember, I am the fire. To feed all this industry, I posted a standing by order in the chat. 3 units of material per lump of tumor meat, unlimited quantity, forever. Every casual in the region who could kill a meatball suddenly had a customer, and the meat poured in daily, and my 3 hungriest dependents, the scabbard, the tree in my body, and the potion line, never went short again. The apocalypse's first commodity market, and I was the whole demand side. The tree, by the way, kept growing on that diet. Past sapling into what the system called a young tree. Its roots comfortable around my ribs, its growth bar creeping through the 60s, and every stage promised a new eye-themed ability. I fed it, it paid rent, and neither of us discussed what happens when a tree that eats meat finishes growing inside a man. Landlord-tenant relations are built on not asking. The potion income turned me from rich into infrastructure. Players started their mornings checking if my stock had dropped. My gear went through a full fashion cycle in those trading days too, and I wanted to fend the flower crown in advance because everyone brings it up. The trade channel listed a headband woven from fresh flowers, plus 20 ability points and faster point regeneration, clearly designed for some graceful flower fairy build. I acquired it through a 3-way trade involving my retired cleaver, a rusted longsword, and a pair of noisy speed boots. Then I put it on my head, on top of the forehead full of extra eyes, above the meat backpack, and wore it into battle every day after. 20 ability points is 20 ability points. Style is a stat for people who can afford to lose. And between batches, I kept expanding the catalog. A diving potion brewed from fish frog glands that grew working gills for 10 minutes. A slick skin potion nobody bought except one enthusiastic stranger. A stone skin potion that gave normal players a version of my armor. The apocalypse had a pharmacist, and the pharmacist had a monopoly. And the monopolist's first weapon, the crying candy hammer, was out there earning a second career in Xiao Mei's hands. Somewhere in that stretch, the rod also fished up a longbow made of dark red bone that fired arrows condensed from my own health, 50 points a shot, unlimited ammo for anyone with blood to spare, which, hello, have we met? Ranged option acquired. I paired it later with an arrow tower blueprint I strong-armed off a chest by sniping warning shots at the player who found it first, and the tower converted into something called automatic fire. My bow now floated beside me, drew itself, and shot on its own within 50 meters. I had become a man with a self-operating turret and a meat backpack with a face. The cryptid threads in chat were writing themselves at this point. And one night, at a safe sanity level, I sat down with the forbidden page again and crossed the halfway line. 50%. And the knowledge stopped being theory. My flesh answered me now. I could soften it, move it, reshape it like warm clay, seal a wound by simply telling the edges to hold hands, twist a joint the wrong way round and back. I sat by my fire, quietly turning my own arm into shapes no arm votes for, equal parts awed and nauseous, and the page hummed in my inventory like a teacher who knows you'll be back. I also went back to the 10,000-eye tree, on purpose, to look my unfinished business in its many, many eyes. My scan could read it now. Level 10, 8,400 health. My strength stat had tripled since the fruit heist, and the plan wrote itself in the ledger where I keep such things. Stockpile materials, self-heal through its damage, sacrifice at the peak, and grind that lumber pile down to a stump. Not today. Today it would win. But that tree had marked me, and I'd marked it back, and only one of us could compound interest. Then, out in the gravel flats, past the statue fields, I found the church. It stood inside a dome of soft light, a real building, ancient, carved with winged figures, the first architecture in this world that hadn't collapsed. My faith pendant lit up at the boundary like a key card, and the barrier opened for me. Inside the dome, the mist was gone, and the air was clean, and a status effect settled over me like a warm towel. Land of blessings. Sanity held at its healthiest state. After a week of paying my mind out in installments, standing there felt like the first full breath since the teleport. Which is exactly how they get you. There were players inside, 6 of them, glowing with health, greeting me by name, thrilled, so thrilled, everyone here was thrilled about everything. A woman grabbed my hand at the door and towed me in like a lost relative. Boss Li Wei, you're so lucky to have found us. 3 of them had been kneeling at the altar when I entered and rose in one motion, like a wave. They lived here now, they said. Several days, they said, maybe longer. Time was slippery here, and they said that like it was a feature. No hunger here, no monsters here. And when I asked the question that mattered, the one about their shelters, the cabins their lives were legally welded to, their smiles didn't flicker even a little. Don't need them, they said. This is our shelter now. And my hand quietly found the cleaver. Because in this world, no need for your shelter is not a lifestyle, it's an amputation. And nobody smiles through an amputation unless something else is running the face. They talked in turns and then in unison, and the unison is when the hairs on my neck stood up. They invited me to join the Radiant Purification sect and become a radiant world-cleansing cultist. Then the bell rang, and their god came out. A winged phantom unfolded behind the altar statue, neither old nor young, neither anything nor anything else, beautiful the way an anglerfish light is beautiful. A voice filled my skull, warm as soup. Faith in me, blessings upon you. And the system laid the contract on the table in clean bullet points. Become a cultist, receive the spirit's blessing, your bond with your shelter will be severed. Severed. My shelter. The thing I am. My mouth was already curving into the same syrupy smile as theirs, my head already nodding along to the warm soup voice, and it took everything the dark whisper and a week of nightmares had built in me to bend that nod into words. And the words came out as the least holy sentence ever spoken in a church. I told the winged phantom, in the vocabulary of my people, exactly where it could file its membership form, and that only a complete idiot would trade being a fortress for being a finger puppet. The warm light curdled. The voice went from soup to fingernails. Heretic, it shrieked, and the system stacked the bad news like pancakes. The sect is now hostile. The blessings are revoked. Teleportation is sealed in this area. And, in bold, a radiant world-cleansing spirit is descending. The cultists came at me smiling, glowing blades of light growing out of their palms, and the nearest one stabbed at my ribs while still calling me a lost lamb. I answered with a full-circle draw cut, the scabbard's speed bonus turning it into one bright ring of steel, and the whole front row came apart at the waist. And then I learned the horrible truth of the congregation. No insides. Nothing. The halves hit the floor hollow as mannequins and kept praying, lips moving on the fallen heads, while pale threads reached out of the cut surfaces and started lacing the bodies back together like shoes. I found the trick on the third one. A knot of light buried somewhere different in each body, migrating when threatened, and my forehead eyes tracked the glow while my blade chased it, and each burst of light was one permanent silence in the choir. The doors had sealed themselves. The statue was charging up like a boiler, and when the descending light finally poured over me, the fake mom trick's rich uncle, a full possession attempt, agree, looping in my skull in a voice like an angel choir, Two things saved me, and neither was willpower. The forbidden knowledge surfaced on its own and gnawed at the choir like static, and my sacrifice ability triggered itself, no command from me, tearing my skin open and burning my health, and whatever unnameable thing accepts my sacrifices yanked me back out of the light like a bouncer pulling a drunk friend from a cult van. I stood in my own spreading blood, ruined and clear-headed, in the middle of a church full of smiling shells, and the maddest smile in the room was mine. Then I walked through their glowing knives, put the cleaver through the boiler statue, and brought the whole rotten miracle down. The blessing dome died, the church collapsed on my head. Worth it. I woke under the rubble with 65 sanity, a head full of theology, and a working theory of this entire world. There were powers up there, big ones, and they ran competing business models. The spirit sold safety for ownership of you. My sacrifice partner sold power for blood, a straight transaction, no soul lien. And the forbidden page sold understanding, payable in sanity. Faith, blood, knowledge, 3 currencies. I was apparently a customer of 2 and an enemy of the first, and honestly, that ratio felt right. Somewhere around that week, I stopped mid-stride one morning and actually read my own status screen, top to bottom, the way you finally read a bank statement after a good year. Strength pushing 80 before bonuses. Agility past 60. Health over 1400, self-repairing, fireproof, iron-plated, and drinkable sewage compatible. Abilities column scrolling off the screen. Repair, fireball, blink, furnace, sacrifice, scan, weak point sight, corpse siphon, equipment digestion, handcrafted alchemy. On day 1, the standard human in this world came with 80 total health and a dream. I could now take a full claw swipe from a 5-meter monster as a rounding error, punch out an elite tree in the time it takes to describe one, outrun anything on 4 limbs, and heal it all back by snacking on lumber. The kid who arrived here without a house had quietly become the biggest building in the region. I closed the screen and got back to work, because the one stat that mattered kept moving, and its name was, what's trying to kill me next? The church's wreckage paid out too. A premium spear, rusted and wrapped in old bandages with a rolling eye set in the pommel, that injected rot into wounds and hit holy things 50% harder, which given my new enemies list was practically a personalized gift. A set of lucky dice that grew luckier the crazier I got. And a defiled core from the statue that I fed to my scabbard. No, I didn't ask its consent. Yes, I bribed it with meat. And the scabbard gained the power to bless whatever blade I drew with a random boost. Frost, lightning, armor piercing, different every pull. My luggage was now a toddler, a guard dog, and an enchanting station. The swamp itself, when I first waded into that region, introduced itself politely. A vine hanging in the bushes turned out to be a snake thing with a sucker mouth, mimicking dead plants, and my radar caught its heartbeat before its lunge caught my neck. The local frogfish hybrids spat sticky corruption from the water. The regional debuff slowed everyone's boots in the mud. And on my second cast into its waters, the anything rod pulled up a book, and I braced for cosmic horror, and the title was 10,000 Cold Jokes, a joke book. Effect, read 10 jokes a day, recover 1 sanity, the humor certified by a system that had never once been funny on purpose. The author, per the flavor text, died laughing before finishing it. I read my 10 that evening by the fire, and I want to testify under oath that 2 of them actually got me, and my sanity ticked up 1 point, and somewhere the ghost of a comedian got his royalties. This world poisoned the water, weaponized the moon, and then handed out dad jokes as medicine. I stopped trying to understand its design philosophy and just used the pharmacy. The swamp was also where Chen Hao nearly shot me. I felt him on my radar first, and then his voice came through the fog, sharp and scared. Who's there? Answer or I fire, and I announced myself before his trigger finger could vote. He lowered the gun halfway, remembered the fog wears people's shapes, raised it again, and walked in slow until our name tags resolved, and only then did the barrel drop and the grin come out. "Brother Ling! Sorry, thought you were a fake." The man had upgraded since our noodle lunch, new gear everywhere, the vine gun rebuilt meaner, and he was out here grinding levels, trying, in his words, to catch up to me, which I chose to find adorable rather than concerning. He took one look at my setup, the meat scabbard with its eye, the flower crown, the spear grip over my shoulder, and processed it with the diplomacy of a true friend by saying nothing at all. He also came bearing agenda. The top teams, Liu Cheng's, Gao Feng's, Zhao Gong's, were quietly planning a joint expedition against the 10,000 Eye Tree, the level 10 monster squatting in the region's best farming forest, and they wanted me in when it happened, probably after the black tide passed. I neither agreed nor refused, which everyone involved correctly read as, "I'll come, and I'll also privately plan to solo it first if the mood strikes." And when I mentioned the sunken light in the swamp waters, he begged me not to dive, told me about the players who'd tried, the hallucinations at depth, the ones who didn't surface. I promised nothing. He knew me well enough by then to hear it. The same swamp nearly ended the whole enterprise a few days on. Something took my fishing line and pulled, and it turned out to be a coordinated team of fish frogs, and I learned mid-air that the swamp was deeper than a church tower, black all the way down. Underwater, my radar died, my flames choked, and tongue ropes hauled at my legs, while my brain screamed old nightmare footage at me. I burned 50 wood in one flash boil, cooked the swimmers off my legs, and breached like an angry kettle. Then I invented the diving potion, specifically to go back down and rob that swamp of its sunken chest, because the swamp had started it. The same waters coughed a dagger onto my hook, too, a thing of braided snake script called the Medusa dagger. Whatever it stabs turns to stone around the wound until you pull it out. Stab an enemy, statue. Stab yourself, instant tourniquet and anesthesia. I have stabbed myself with it more times than any doctor would endorse. It has never once let me down. The chest at the bottom of the swamp run, the one in the pool by the egg, held blueprints for a water purifier and a lump of black liquid with a faint blue shine and a name tag my scan couldn't finish reading. Abyss Vortex Master. And before my hand could pull back, the liquid spun, the spin became a whirlpool, and the whirlpool ate me. I came to on an island under a dead sky, next to an ocean I recognized from my nightmares, and the system briefed me like a customs officer. You have been transported to Abyss Island. The trial of the Abyss Vortex Master has begun. Complete it to return. You are inside the vortex, and your cognition is being distorted, except mine wasn't. The distortion status listed itself and then added in the parenthetical tone of a bureaucrat discovering a loophole they can't close. Currently inside shelter, immune to vortex effects. The island's whole gimmick, an ambient madness that slowly spiraled everyone here into jelly, checked my paperwork, found that I technically never left home, and waved me through. My cheat had jurisdiction in other dimensions. I'd have felt smug if the island had left me time. The locals came first. Translucent, gel-bodied things in the shape of people, with slow whirlpools turning inside their chests, chanting as they charged. The sound of the tide is the holy word. The black water is salvation. Vortex servants, the encyclopedia called them. Players who failed the trial, recycled into snow. Normal weapons went through them like spoons through pudding, and the pudding reassembled. The Medusa dagger solved them. Stone them mid-charge, shatter the statue. Next. Then I heard swearing in the distance. Real, human, high-quality swearing, and found 6 servants carrying 2 players toward the island's center like furious luggage. One captive was too far gone, giggling at the sky. The other was cursing the entire staff individually, and his name tag read Cao Yang, Region 84. Region 84. This island pulled from everywhere. Cross-server content, and the entry fee was your mind. I negotiated his rescue the way everything in my life gets negotiated. He spotted me, lit up like a casino, and started yelling, "Brother, big brother, save me. We're the same. We're both human." Which, coming from a man who was 30% jelly, was a bold claim for both of us. I strolled alongside his porters asking questions, and he answered fast, being carried toward the exact ceremony he was answering about. Corrupted players get hauled to the trial. Trials in the island center. The closer you get, the worse the whirl chews your head. Then I mentioned, idly, that my throat was awfully dry, and a cola popped out of his inventory like a vending machine having a panic attack, and I drank it at leisure while 6 monsters carried my informant past me. Then I mentioned my supplies were low and glanced meaningfully at the horizon, and the man donated his entire material reserve mid-abduction while screaming that if he died there'd be no inheritance anyway, I'd better save him now while he was still generous. Sound financial reasoning. I stoned and shattered his porters. 211 wood, and a man from another region who spent the next hour talking without visible breathing. His name was Cao Yang, top 3 of Region 84. He mentioned the ranking 4 times, and he'd been here long enough to watch the trial eat a partner. We traded worlds while his skin turned to jelly, and it was the first real census of the outside I'd ever gotten. His region had the eye moon too, the black tide, the fog, the same disasters on the same schedule, plus their own riot night with its own body count. And the region of the other captive, number 945, was worse, a full free-for-all where the players had given up on monsters and specialized in each other. Everyone hunting everyone, trust extinct. We sat on the edge of a madness island comparing hometowns like two men at a bus stop, and arrived at the same conclusion from opposite ends of the world. Our regions were the lucky ones. Somewhere out there were thousands of the other kind. His survival plan was a strategy he kept trying to resell me even after giving it away free. Adapt to low sanity in advance. Meditate. Hold your sense of self through the visions. Decent theory, actually. I told him my version, and this is verbatim. Don't follow the hallucination script. Be anything it doesn't expect. Sing a children's song. He looked at me the way you look at a man who has clearly already lost the thing he's claiming to protect. And then, because he was from a sane region with sane people, he asked whether I wanted to hear his method one more time. Paid consultation. First minute free. The trial itself was a black whirlpool the size of a stadium, horizontal, floating at the end of a spiral platform of carved stone. And the walk there was its own exam, because the closer we got to the island's center, the more the geometry gave up. Rocks leaned toward the middle. Plants grew in curves. Cao Yang walked what he swore was a straight line and drifted left like a shopping cart, and only I could see it, because only I was exempt from the spin. The half-gone captive we dragged along stopped needing dragging near the end. He heard the whirl and ran to it, laughing, arms open. We let him go first, both of us pretending it was mercy, and both of us taking notes. The vortex extended a single stream of water to meet him, gentle as a hand. He stared into the spin, and his face went through wonder into rapture, and he shouted praise to the Great One with tears streaming, and the black lines in his gel body coiled tight, and he tipped off the platform as staff. Total elapsed time, under a minute. Cao Yang watched his test subject fail in record time and went pale in real time, and his voice cracked when he offered, one more time, to sell me his meditation method at a discount. I told him I'd go next, and he said, with the deep warmth of a man securing a free trial run, that if we both passed, maybe we'd meet again someday. I stepped into the spin. Inside was an ocean stacked into a funnel, a sea the size of a sky, all of it turning around a hole of absolute black. And swimming in the walls of that funnel were thousands of the converted, spiraling down in slow ecstasy. And the pull wasn't fear. That's the trap I'd braced for, and it never came. The pull was homesickness, warmth, the absolute certainty that sliding down that spiral was returning somewhere I'd always belonged, and my body was already growing the gel to make the trip comfortable. The chant translated itself in my ears. Flesh dissolves into the whirl's core. Consciousness returns to the eternal spiral. And it sounded, and I am ashamed of this, cozy. So I sang the lamb song at it. Off-key, in a dimension of cosmic surrender, one man belted a cartoon theme at the concept of dissolution, and the gel on my skin evaporated, and the funnel, I swear, hesitated. And in that hesitation, the thing at the bottom of the spin looked up at me. I won't describe it because it can't be done, and the attempt cost me 10 sanity in one bite, the biggest single hit my mind ever took, and the lights went out. When they came back on, I was face down in the swamp shallows back home, soaked, wrecked, hollow, and haunted, because at 59 sanity the world plays its own soundtrack. Whispering fog, shapes in every direction, and, right on schedule, the greatest hits, a voice through the static crying, "My son, can you hear us? Wake up, your mother is begging you." Third time this world had tried the mom routine on me. I screamed into the marsh, at full volume, with feeling that I don't have a mother, and the marsh, the fog, and the hallucination all went quiet at once, like a scam call center hearing the fatal words, "I know what you are." The orphan build, undefeated. At this point, it wasn't even a weakness they kept probing. It was a wall they kept walking into. 2 lines were burning in my notification log when my head cleared. You have passed the trial of the Abyss Vortex Master. You have gained initial mastery of the power of primordial water. Power. Not skill, not ability. A new category on my status screen with 1 entry in it. And I spent the evening by the swamp learning what the category meant. Water obeyed me now, up to a ton of it, shaped and thrown by thought. I lifted a cube of swamp the size of a cow and held it shivering in the air until my skull rang. I pulled the leftover moisture out of a monster corpse and popped it like a balloon, which taught me the limit that mattered. I couldn't grab the liquid inside a living body. The flesh blocked me. This world had at least one safety rail bolted down, but an open wound leaked faster if I asked it to, and my health arrows from the bone bow could steer mid-flight now. Hairpin turns, no line of sight required. I tested that on a fish frog doing its whack-a-mole routine in the swamp, fired the arrow one direction, walked it around in a lazy curve, and dropped it straight down through the surfacing head from above. The swamp went very quiet after that. Word travels in ponds. And the trick that made me laugh out loud in an empty marsh, any substance I touched could be briefly told to become liquid, including my own body. My arm ran like wax, held any shape I poured it into for a few seconds, and hardened back solid on whatever pose I chose, and physical blows just passed through the liquid parts like a bad rumor. The mental bill for it was steep, a whirlpool tugging at the inside of my head with every use, so it was a trump card, not a lifestyle. Still, my body was a house, a pharmacy, an orchard, and now, on request, a puddle. The servants of the deep counted me as management too, which came due later, when a whirlpool stone from a chest let me summon my own gel employee, free, on demand, chanting praise while it worked. That stone came out of the pool by the egg, along with a purple chest my new diving skills finally reached, and the fishing sessions around that pool that week produced a Hall of Fame run from the anything rod. One cast brought up a skeleton that scattered on landing, thank you, very haunting. Another produced a bright red box with a speaker grill that turned out to be a music player. I pressed its one button and it started playing the saddest song ever written, a song scientifically engineered to make you remember every embarrassing thing you've done since childhood. My mood dropped like a stone in the first 8 bars. I slapped it off before it could finish its work. Item class, special. Effect, plays sad music, induces despair. I kept it. You never know when you'll need to ruin somebody's day at range. And then the rod delivered its masterpiece. A soft, yellowish lump landed beside me, and I leaned in, and the item description confirmed what my nose was already filing a complaint about. Lucky dog droppings. Premium grade. Effect, step on it to permanently gain 1 point of luck. There is a dog somewhere in this cosmos named Lucky, said the flavor text, and this is its contribution. I stood over a premium grade prank for a full minute, weighing dignity against a permanent stat. And the stat won. The stat always wins. And I stepped on it, squarely, with commitment. And the system congratulated me like I'd won an award. Luck +1, permanent. Somewhere the rod's -10 luck side and its +10 luck side were laughing together at their finest joint work. I scraped my shoe on a rock for a while and chose to feel lucky. Somewhere out in the multiverse, Chow Yang stepped into that same spin, humming a tune he'd learned from a stranger. I genuinely hope it worked. The apocalypse needs more men who take good advice with bad grace. Back home, the countdown owned everyone's mood. The Black Tide bar had learned to sprint, 74%, then 93% overnight, and the announcement each morning landed on the region like a doctor clearing his throat. The chat's 5 stages played out in real time. It won't fill for days, said denial. What even drives the number, said anger. Maybe if we all stay inside, said bargaining. I planned my whole week around this, said a man whose plans were now confetti. And then a quiet voice pointed out that the bar only updated at dawn, meaning it could hit 100 at any hour of any day, and the whole region moved to acceptance at a dead sprint. Torches sold out. The torch seller, who had spent a week being mocked for her useless product, got to compose the single most dignified told you so in the trade channel's history. Wood prices doubled. My potion drops caused stampedes. And I spent the eve of the apocalypse's apocalypse building waterworks, because the purifier blueprint from the swamp converted into the single most quality of life upgrade of my career: filtration. My body now purified 3 liters of sewage a day internally, meaning I could kneel at any poisoned puddle in this world and drink it like spring water. Which is exactly the pose Xiao Mei, Gao Feng, and Chen Hao found me in. Picture it from their side. You track a missing treasure chest to a poisoned pool. You find, lapping at the black water on all 4s, a creature with a meat backpack that has an eye and a bound mouth, 2 weapons sprouting from the meat, a flower crown on its head. Don't ask, the crown was +20 ability points, and when it hears you, it raises its dripping face and says, "Oh, hey guys." Gao Feng's hand went to his weapon. Chen Hao made a noise I choose to describe as respectful. Xiao Mei asked, very carefully, whether I had just been drinking sewage, And when I nodded, all three of them took one small, synchronized step back. Then she sold me a healing stone anyway. Commerce beats horror. It's why our species made it this far. The egg chose that week to turn red. It glowed now, and something dark rotated slowly inside, and my arrows bounced off its shell without leaving a mark, not a dent, not a sound worth the ammunition. The trio went to test their own luck against it, on the sensible theory that killing a boss in the shell beats fighting one out of it, and got caught in its hallucination field before their first swing. I arrived to find three of the region's strongest standing frozen at the red boundary, pupils blown wide, mouths working at nothing, leaning by degrees toward the glow, like plants toward a lamp. I sent my gel servant wading into the red zone to drag them out by their collars, and even through the summon link, second-hand, 1 second of what that egg was dreaming got through to me. A dark world, the egg its only light, and behind it, patient, a shape the size of weather. The trio came out of it gasping like divers, and Xiao Mei, who charges for everything, thanked me for free, which told me exactly how bad the inside of that second had been. They headed home at speed. Nobody proposed a second attempt. We stopped testing the egg after that. Some eggs you just let hatch, from a distance, preferably a regional one. The mushroom from Zhao Gong's treasury got eaten around then too, because my sanity ledger needed every deposit it could find. Roasted, it smelled like actual food. Swallowed, it restored 3 points of mind and immediately withdrew 300 health over 30 seconds, while my vision filled with tiny green people who climbed onto my arms and burst into paint, and the paint caught green fire, and the fire showed me things I decided not to keep. 30 seconds of guided tour through a paint factory in hell in exchange for 3 points of sanity. I did the math, checked my regeneration, and scheduled it as a recurring treatment. This world's medicine cabinet was a dare from top to bottom, and I had the constitution to accept all of them. The healing stone Xiao Mei sold me went into an upgrade scroll build, and the furnace inside me evolved. White flames now, on command. Holy fire, warm as a bath, that healed me while it burned everything unholy near me, and lit the dark half again as far as regular flame. I tested it by cutting my arm and watching the wound close in 3 seconds under the glow. My internal amenities now included a chapel, and unlike the last chapel I'd visited, this one worked for me. Then the bar filled, and the lights went out on the world. Black tide at 100%, said the system. Eternal night for 3 days. And this darkness wasn't absence of light, it was presence of something else. It swallowed my 100-meter radar to nothing. It erased my own body from my senses until I lit my flames just to prove I had edges. Keep your shelter's interior 80% lit or your mind starts dissolving, said the rules, and all across the region, cabins became little lit boats on a black ocean. And into that ocean, the system released the shadows. They spawned wherever light wasn't. Humanoid, featureless, and personal. The first one that came for me announced itself by reaching one enormous arm out of the darkness into my firelight and dragging my gel servant off into the black like a toy off a shelf. I threw a fireball after it on reflex, and in the streak of light I saw my servant being dismantled by something man-shaped and charged. What stepped around to meet me was holding a long-handled weapon with a round head, and I knew the silhouette before I knew why. It was carrying a lollipop. My lollipop. The shadow was me, Day 1 edition, and my scan slid off it, every stat a censored bar, and the eye of flaw found no weak points at all. Because how do you find the flaw in your own shadow? We fought in the 2-meter circle of my own firelight, me and my paper doll twin, and when I knocked its candy away, it just reached backward into the darkness and drew another one out, because it was wearing the entire night as an inventory. It dove out of my light to heal, circled, came back at my spine. So I stopped letting it choose. I pinned it with a lunge, held it in the fire's reach while it thrashed, and learned the one true fact of shadow anatomy. They do not enjoy sustained light, and they enjoy sustained burning even less. It came apart into smoke, and a chime I hadn't seen before rang. Eternal night points, +1. There was a leaderboard for shadow kills, and a reward pool at the end, and the entire region was about to spend 3 days competing in the dark. The chat noticed my point before I did. Li Wei is ranked first! How? It's been 10 minutes. And then, in the grand tradition of my customer base, boss, what are the shadows? Tell us, please, for free, we're begging. Being me, I sold the guide within the hour, 30 units a copy, 50 sales before copycats undercut me with discount versions of my own field notes, and then someone leaked the whole thing to the channel for clout, and the information economy did what it always does, raced to the bottom while the first mover kept the profits. 1,500 units of material for one fight report. Being also me, I then farmed the leaderboard using the buyer's own discovery, that dim light attracts shadows, by switching my flames to cold mode and walking the night like bait on legs. The cold flames deserve their origin story because they were nearly my dumbest death. Nights earlier, out in the fog, I'd spotted a soft blue glow floating in the dark, and my brain said treasure chest with the confidence of a brain that had opened 40 of them. It was not a chest. It was a ball of blue fire hanging in midair, and when I walked up, it flared, and the temperature fell off a cliff, and ice crystals started growing on my arms while a status effect called freezing sanded 30% off my speed. A ghost cold fire, an elemental, a living flame that burned in reverse. My spear passed through it like a rumor. My dagger did nothing. Physical objects simply weren't its problem. What was its problem, it turned out, was other elements. My fireball hurt it, and a lightning enchant from the scabbard's blessing roulette put it out entirely. And then my corpse siphon did something new. Instead of a decimal of stats, it drank the cold itself. 10% of a cold fire element, deposited directly into my internal furnace. I hunted 10 more of those drifting blue liars, and at 100% absorption, my furnace unlocked a second setting. Flames of choice, orange or blue, heat or cold, plus permanent immunity to freezing. In a world about to be plunged into a frozen eternal night, I'd eaten a space heater's evil twin and become weatherproof in both directions. The lesson stands. In this world, even the fake treasure glows are loot if your stomach is brave enough. The shadows obliged, and so did their business partner, because the mist, my old enemy the weather, had figured out team play. Its trick went like this. A fog shape would lunge at me from the front, pure theater, no substance, and while my attention tracked the decoy, a shadow would materialize behind me from the dark. The first time they ran the play, I spun on the fog like a rookie and got claws across my back for the lesson. After that, I trusted the radar over my eyes, let the fog dance its little dances, and greeted whatever crept up behind me without turning around, which is exactly the kind of move that builds a cryptid's brand. Somewhere between the 3rd and 10th ambush, I realized I was in a tag team match against the local atmosphere, and the atmosphere was losing, and it knew it, because the giggling in the fog was getting personal. They came out of the black in 1s and 2s. They tried my own moves on me. They whispered offers, and one got close enough to hug me, and the hug came with a sales pitch poured straight into the meat of my brain. Become darkness. Stop fearing it. Become the thing that's feared. And it felt, for one rotten second, like the vortex all over again, warm and homeward. I stabbed myself with the Medusa dagger, and let the stone spread through the hug, and shattered us both apart, and burned the thing to smoke with the holy fire, which, as advertised, treated evil creatures the way bleach treats a stain. And every shadow corpse I drained gave me a sliver of something called dark adaptation, and night by night the eternal dark got less absolute for me. Outlines first, then shapes. The one commodity this event was designed to deny everyone, sight in the dark, and I was buying it by the corpse. Somewhere in the middle of all this, the region's daily rhythm shifted around me like weather around a mountain. My point total became a public utility, players checking it to gauge how dangerous the night was running. When my counter stalled for a few hours, because I was asleep, the chat generated theories. He's died, he's found an exploit, he's negotiating with the shadows. And when it resumed, the theories were quietly deleted. One entrepreneurial soul started a betting pool on my final score. I know because he messaged me asking if I wanted in on my own lime, which is either a scam or the purest compliment this world ever paid me, and honestly, I never decided which. For sleep, I found the most secure bedroom in the region, other people's rooftops. Climb up in cold flame silence, stretch out over some stranger's watchtower blind spot, let their shelter and their bonfires soak up the shadow attacks, and rest above the noise like a cat on a warm car. The owner below me spent that whole first night staring into the dark, guarding against the legendary crawling aberrant creature that the chat swore was circling the neighborhood, and the legend was sleeping 11 feet above his head the entire time, using his roof as a mattress and his paranoia as a lullaby. The nightmares kept pace with the world, of course. Nothing in my life stays in its lane. One night, the dream rained black glue, and when I wiped my arm clean, the skin came off like wet paper. Underneath, set into the muscle like gems in a bracelet, eyes. A full row of them, blinking out of my own arm. I woke myself with the finger check before the screaming version of me could take the wheel. Another night, I got the Raft and Island rerun with a bonus feature. Everything I coughed up trying to leave my body through my throat, and I chewed it and swallowed it back down out of pure spite while telling myself it was calamari, and the dream, thrown off its script, ended early. The nightly rule was simple by then. The dream brings the horror, I bring the disrespect, and whichever of us commits harder wins the night. The Raft dreams had a sequel arc now. The ocean grew a mouth one night, the whole sea revealed as one held sip inside jaws wider than the horizon, and I beat it not by waking but by argument, standing on my raft insisting to the dream that oceans do not eat people until the dream, embarrassed, agreed. That refusal bought me something: control. The raft obeyed me like a speedboat afterward, and the island on the horizon crept closer night by night. Another dream put me on a roof watching a man with white flames and a rusted spear curse at shadows below. It took me a full minute of looking at him to realize the view was wrong. I was the shadow that night. The man was me. When he charged, I greeted him with my own catchphrase and woke up mid-swing with a lot to unpack. And one reading of the forbidden page, out in the dark at 70 sanity, went somewhere new. 79% progress, and the price this time was my flesh itself, tearing and rebuilding in cycles while the mist pressed in to watch, and the letters rewrote something structural in me. A shadow chose that exact moment to creep into my firelight and reach for my helpless, convulsing body with both arms. The perfect ambush, absolutely free. My flesh ate it. I wasn't steering. Mid-seizure, my own body braided itself into a python of muscle, grew a mouth I have never owned, took the shadow out of the air like a frog taking a fly, chewed, and settled back into the shape of a man before my consciousness finished the lap back into my skull. The kill chime rang, +1 point. I lay there, fully healed and deeply outnumbered inside my own skin, and updated my personal records. Occupants of this body, at minimum, me, a tree, a workshop, a church, a furnace, and now, apparently, a bodyguard with no supervisor. The last stretch of Eternal Night turned into a straight points race, and I had a front row seat to both sides of it, because Guo Xuan narrated his boss's campaign to anyone who'd listen. Liu Cheng, the region's number 2, ran his hunt like a factory shift. Ring his cabin in bonfires, dim one section to bait a shadow, kill it with torch and blade, relight, rest, repeat, hour after hour, day and night, and every time his count ticked up, Guo Xuan posted a tribute. And the man earned it, honestly. 16 points, then 26. Clean, disciplined work. First place held through pure grind while he visibly aged in real time. Then I woke up from a rooftop nap, stretched, and went to work, and my style was the opposite of a factory. I was a moving lure with a floating bow, cold, dim flames, and a gel servant on point, strolling through open darkness that spawned shadows on top of me faster than any cabin could bait them. My counter did in hours what shift work did in days. The chat watched the gap close and provided commentary with the neutrality of a stadium crowd. His hype man messaged me for my secret technique, on behalf of a friend. Zhao Gong messaged me. Xiao Mei messaged me. I told them all the truth, that there was no secret, I just lived outside. And not one of them believed the truth, and several offered to buy it. And for the first time in my career, I couldn't sell a thing, because the system had no way to certify honesty that disappointing. I took first place back on the final day, 54 points to his 36. Somewhere out there, a man who had not slept in 3 days opened his leaderboard, saw my number, and made a sound that his own minion described to the chat as, "Brother Liu is fine. Brother Liu is completely fine. Please stop asking." Liu Cheng, if you ever hear this, it was never personal. You guarded a lamp. I was the dark's whole delivery route. But the night's real headline wasn't the race. It was the players who stopped answering. It started as one weird post, a guy insisting the darkness around his shelter was leaning on his firelight, compressing it, eating it. The chat diagnosed stress, prescribed rest, moved on. He didn't move on. His posts got shorter and faster. The flames are jumping with no wind. The lit area is shrinking. Something is watching me from straight ahead. I can feel exactly where. And then the last one, the one I've kept. He wrote that he'd thrown a lit torch out into the dark to see. The torch flew its arc, and in the flare of it, he saw a silhouette, and the silhouette was bigger than the piece of night it stood in. Then his torch went out in midair. Not landed, went out, like a candle pinched between fingers. The chat told him he was hallucinating. He stopped posting. And when I passed his cluster later, his fire was still burning politely in the yard. His walls stood intact. No marks, no struggle, no loot orb, and no him. A home with the kettle still warm and the owner subtracted. The next night, a different voice asked the same question in the same words. Flames bending with no wind, something drinking the light. Laughter out past the glow, coming closer between sentences. Somebody in chat remembered the first guy and typed, "Wait, didn't someone ask this exact thing before?" And the channel went quiet, the way a room goes quiet when everyone counts the chairs. Then nothing. Again. 2 identical disappearances, both mid-conversation, both leaving their fires burning, and the eternal night still had a day on the clock. Something was walking the eternal night, eating players whole. Fires lit, doors locked, and it left no receipts. The shadows were the event. This was not the event. This was something using the event as cover. It had a route, and the route was getting closer to the neighborhoods. And the last thing I fished from a dark chest before my final rooftop shift was a lantern that radiated darkness instead of light, with a description that read, "True darkness is not the absence of light, but the inability of light to save you." I lay on a stranger's roof under a moon that was an eye in a night that would not end, holding a lamp that shone black. I'd tested the lantern exactly once, clicked it on, watched it eat my own holy fire and every other light for meters around, felt the dark start unstitching my sense of where I ended, and clicked it off with respect. An invisibility tool priced in sanity, for emergencies only, the kind of item you're glad to own and hope to never justify. It went into the inventory next to everything else this world had paid me for surviving it. And I took stock, because that's what a shelter does. It keeps inventory. 11 days ago, I arrived here as the only man without a house, a dead man walking with a candy hammer. Now I was the house, the arsenal, the pharmacy, the water supply, the dungeon guide, the market, and the monster under the region's bed. And the things that ruled this world had started learning my name. The moon watched me personally. The fog held a grudge. A tree with 10,000 eyes was compounding interest. An egg was dreaming something the size of weather with my address on it. And whatever accepted my sacrifices had opened a running tab. Then I closed my eyes for the last watch of the eternal night, and the dream put me somewhere new. Not the raft, not the black ocean I'd sailed every night since the shard. Solid ground. A continent of jagged rock under a dead sky, and far off at the edge of sight, the sea I used to drift on, demoted to scenery. My island had finally let me ashore, and it had grown into a world, and the rocks around me stood in shapes that watched, and standing among those rocks, staring at me with exactly my expression, a stranger, not a fog puppet, not a shadow wearing my outline. A person, with weight and breath and a face I'd never seen, looking as shocked to see me as I was to see him. We said it at the same time, word for word. Who are you, and how did you get into my dream? His dream. My dream. Both of us said my. Somewhere in the arithmetic of sleep, 2 people's nightmares had been sharing a wall this whole time, and tonight the wall had a door in it, and before either of us could ask the follow-up, the sky dimmed like a theater, and the stranger's face did something I recognized from mirrors, the fast, pale calm of a man whose schedule just filled up. "Why so early this time?" he muttered, which meant he knew this show, which meant he'd survived it before, and then he ran without another word, and every rock on that continent stood up. The stones unfolded into things, the ground cracked in lines like lightning, and pale hands came up through every crack, and the dead poured out of the earth in numbers that made my week of monsters look like a petting zoo. All of it, every crawling, standing, unfolding piece of that world, turned toward me at once. The way the tree's eyes had, the way the moon does. I ran. In my own dream, in the place where I am supposedly the architect, I ran like a tourist, and the horde came down on me from every direction at the same time, and the last thing I learned in the eternal night was that somewhere past the edge of my sleep, someone else's nightmare had been waiting for company, and it had my scent now. Ask me sometime what it wanted. Better yet, ask me who the other dreamer was. Because the eternal night had one more day on the clock, the egg by the pool had started to glow, and my body, my house, my fortress, mine, had just received its first knock from the inside of a dream, and a shelter always answers the door.